The rain fell in heavy sheets, turning the city streets into glistening mirrors that reflected the neon signs of downtown. Gabriel Hayes pulled his worn jacket tighter around his broad shoulders as he stepped out of the Skyline office complex, nodding goodbye to the night security guard who barely looked up from his crossword puzzle. Another shift done, another night of emptying trash cans and polishing floors that would be scuffed again by morning. The steady drizzle matched his mood as he checked his watch, 12:15 a.m. If he hurried, he could catch the last bus and be home before Mrs. Chen, his elderly neighbor, started worrying. She'd been a godsend since Rachel died, watching over 7-year-old Noah when Gabriel worked the night shift, refusing any payment beyond the occasional bag of groceries he'd leave on her doorstep. 3 years without Rachel. Sometimes it felt like yesterday. Other times, it seemed a lifetime ago. The medical bills had consumed their savings, forced them from their small house into the cramped apartment, transformed Gabriel from a construction foreman into a man who cleaned office buildings in the dead of night. All that remained of their life before was Noah, and Gabriel would do anything to protect what they had left. The sound reached him first, a woman's voice, sharp with fear, cutting through the steady patter of rain on pavement. Gabriel's steps slowed automatically, his senses sharpening as he tried to locate the source. 3 years of night shifts had taught him to recognize when something was wrong in the urban darkness. "Please, just take the purse. I don't want any trouble." Gabriel rounded the corner and saw them in the mouth of an alley between two office buildings. A woman in an expensive-looking coat backed against a brick wall, facing two men who moved with the predatory confidence of people accustomed to taking what they wanted. For a split second, Gabriel hesitated. This wasn't his neighborhood, wasn't his problem. He had a son at home who needed him, a job he couldn't afford to lose, a life carefully constructed around avoiding exactly this kind of situation. The smart move would be to call the police and keep walking. But the woman looked up then, and Gabriel saw her face clearly for the first time. She was older than he'd initially thought, maybe late 30s, with dark hair now damp from the rain, and eyes that held intelligence alongside terror. There was something in her expression, not just fear, but a kind of desperate courage, as if she was trying to talk her way out of a situation that had already moved beyond words. One of the attackers stepped closer, and Gabriel saw the glint of metal in his hand, a knife held low but visible, a threat that transformed this from a simple mugging into something potentially deadly. "Drop the knife and walk away. She's not your prey tonight." Gabriel's voice carried the authority of someone who'd spent years supervising construction crews, projecting confidence he didn't entirely feel. The two men turned toward him, their surprise quickly shifting to calculation. Gabriel was bigger than either of them individually, but they had weapons and numbers. He could see them weighing their options, deciding whether this new complication was worth fighting or if they should just run. "Walk away, hero," the one with the knife said. "This doesn't concern you." "Actually, it does." Gabriel stepped closer, his hands empty but ready. The years of construction work kept him strong despite the years of loss and struggle, and he hoped that would be enough. "The lady asked you to leave. I think you should listen." The woman's eyes widened as she realized what was happening. "No, please," she said, and Gabriel couldn't tell if she was talking to him or to her attackers. "Just go. Both of you, please just go." But it was too late for walking away. The second man, older and more cautious than his partner, had already made the decision to fight. He lunged forward with surprising speed, forcing Gabriel to react instinctively. The muscle memory of 100 construction site scuffles kicked in, and Gabriel sidestepped the attack while grabbing for the man's wrist. They went down together on the wet pavement, Gabriel's size advantage offset by the other man's desperation and the slick surface beneath them. Gabriel heard the woman heard running footsteps that might have been the other attacker fleeing or approaching. There was no time to look and see. The man beneath Gabriel was stronger than he'd expected, wiry and quick, with the kind of lean muscle that came from a hard life on the streets. They rolled across the alley, Gabriel trying to control the other man's hands while avoiding the wild swings aimed at his head. Gabriel managed to pin his opponent's knife hand against the concrete, but the victory was short-lived. Pain exploded along his ribs as the second attacker's blade found its mark, sliding between Gabriel's jacket and shirt to bite deep into flesh. The shock of it made Gabriel gasp. his grip loosening just enough for the first man to break free. "Gabriel!" The woman's voice was sharp with alarm, and somewhere in the back of his mind, Gabriel wondered how she knew his name. But the thought was lost in the immediate reality of trying to stay conscious as warm blood soaked through his shirt. The sound of sirens cut through the night air, still distant but approaching fast. The two attackers looked at each other, some wordless communication passing between them, and then they were gone, disappearing into the maze of alleys and side streets that honeycombed this part of the city. Gabriel sat up slowly, one hand pressed against his wounded side, trying to assess the damage. The pain was sharp but manageable. He'd had worse injuries on construction sites, though none that had bled quite this freely. "Oh God, you're hurt!" The woman was beside him now, her expensive coat forgotten as she knelt on the wet pavement. "We need to get you to a hospital." "I'm okay," Gabriel said automatically, the response of someone who'd learned early that admitting weakness was a luxury he couldn't afford. "Just a scratch." But even as he said it, Gabriel could feel his strength ebbing, the adrenaline that had carried him through the fight now leaving him shaky and nauseous. The woman's face was coming in and out of focus, her features blurring at the edges in a way that suggested this was more than just a scratch. "Stay with me," she said, her voice taking on a tone of command that seemed natural to her. "The ambulance is almost here. You're going to be fine." Gabriel tried to focus on her face to ground himself in something solid while the world tilted around him. She was beautiful, he realized, but not in the manufactured way of television or magazines. Hers was a mature beauty, refined by experience and intelligence, marked by laugh lines and the kind of confidence that came from years of making difficult decisions. "What's your name?" she asked, her hand warm against his forehead. "Gabriel," he managed. "Gabriel Hayes." "I'm Victoria," she said, and something in her tone suggested this was a significant revelation. Victoria Chen. The name meant nothing to Gabriel in his current state, though later he would recognize it as belonging to one of the most powerful business leaders in the city. Right now, she was simply the woman he had tried to help, kneeling beside him in an alley while his blood mixed with rainwater on the concrete. The paramedics arrived in a rush of efficiency and bright lights, their questions cutting through Gabriel's growing confusion. How was he feeling? Did he know where he was? Could he tell them what had happened? Gabriel answered as best he could, but his attention kept drifting to Victoria, who stood back to give the medical team room to work, but never took her eyes off him. There was something in her expression he couldn't quite read. Gratitude certainly, but also a kind of puzzled interest, as if he'd done something that didn't quite fit her understanding of how the world worked. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, Gabriel's last clear thought was of Noah, sleeping safely in their small apartment, with no idea that his father's life had just taken a dramatic turn. Mrs. Chen would find his note in the morning, would take care of getting Noah to school, but Gabriel would have some explaining to do when he got home. If he got home, the thought slipped through his defenses as consciousness finally began to fade, leaving him with the image of Victoria Chen's face and the strange certainty that nothing would ever be quite the same again. Gabriel's eyes opened to the antiseptic smell of hospital air and the steady beep of monitors he couldn't see. The ceiling above him was a white acoustic tile, water-stained in one corner, and for a moment he couldn't remember how he'd gotten here. Then he tried to sit up, and the sharp pain in his ribs brought everything flooding back. The rain, the alley, the woman with the frightened eyes. "Dad, are you awake?" Noah's voice was small and worried, coming from somewhere to Gabriel's left. Gabriel turned his head carefully, every movement sending fresh waves of discomfort through his bandaged torso. Noah sat in a plastic chair that was too big for him, his legs swinging nervously above the floor. Mrs. Chen stood behind him, her weathered face creased with concern. "Hey, buddy," Gabriel managed, his voice rougher than he'd expected. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at school?" "Mrs. Chen got a call from the hospital," Noah said, climbing carefully onto the edge of the bed. "They said you were hurt. Are you okay? Are you going to die like Mom did?" The last question hit Gabriel harder than the knife wound had. He reached out with his good arm and pulled Noah close, feeling his son's small body trembling against him. "No, buddy, I'm not going anywhere, I promise. It's just a cut, and the doctors fixed me up good as new." Over Noah's head, Gabriel met Mrs. Chen's eyes and saw his own worry reflected there. She'd been through this before with them, had helped hold their small family together when Rachel's illness had consumed everything else. The unspoken question hung between them. What would happen to Noah if something happened to Gabriel? The doctors say you need to rest, Mrs. Chen said gently. Noah can stay home from school today. Help take care of you when you get discharged. How long have I been here? Gabriel tried to process the timeline. Since last night. It's almost noon now. The police want to talk to you when you're feeling up to it. Gabriel's mind immediately jumped to practical concerns. He'd missed half a shift, maybe more. Marcus would need to know what had happened, would need to find coverage for the rest of the week if Gabriel couldn't work. The hospital bills would be substantial. Even with the basic insurance his job provided, there would be co-pays and deductibles they couldn't afford. A soft knock at the door interrupted his spiral of worry. A woman in scrubs entered, followed by someone Gabriel didn't immediately recognize. A middle-aged man in an expensive suit who looked distinctly uncomfortable in the hospital environment. Mr. Hayes, the nurse checked his chart. I'm Jennifer, your day nurse. This gentleman is from the hospital billing department. He wanted to speak with you about payment options. Gabriel's stomach clenched. He'd been through this before during Rachel's illness. The careful conversations about payment plans and financial hardship programs. The shame of it never got easier. The reminder that in America, getting hurt or sick was a luxury he couldn't afford. Mr. Hayes, the billing representative said, consulting his tablet, your emergency surgery and overnight stay will total approximately $14,000, with your insurance covering $80,000. Your responsibility would be around $2,800. We do offer payment plans, $2,800. Gabriel felt the number like a physical blow. That was 2 months of rent, money they simply didn't have. I'll need to see the paperwork, understand exactly what. Another knock interrupted him, this one more confident than the first. The door opened to reveal a woman Gabriel recognized but couldn't quite place. Elegant, composed, carrying an arrangement of flowers that probably cost more than Gabriel made in a week. I'm sorry, she said, noting the crowded room. I can come back when you're not busy. Victoria, Gabriel said, the name surfacing from his foggy memories of the previous night. You're Victoria Chen. The billing representative's eyes widened at the name, and Gabriel caught the subtle shift in his posture from bureaucratic efficiency to something approaching deference. Clearly, Victoria Chen was someone who commanded respect in this hospital, perhaps in this entire city. Mr. Hayes, she said, stepping into the room with quiet authority. How are you feeling? Like I got stabbed, Gabriel said, then immediately regretted the flippancy. This woman had been through trauma too, had probably spent the night reliving those terrifying moments in the alley. I'm sorry, I'm fine. How are you? Are you hurt? I'm perfectly fine, thanks to you. Victoria's gaze shifted to Noah, who was studying her with the frank curiosity of childhood. And this must be your son. Noah, Gabriel said, this is Ms. Chen. She's the lady I helped last night. Noah studied Victoria solemnly. Are you a princess? You look like a princess. Victoria's serious expression softened into a genuine smile. I'm not a princess, but thank you for the compliment. Your father is a very brave man. I know, Noah said with the simple pride of a child. He's the bravest person in the whole world. Gabriel felt his chest tighten with emotion. The billing representative cleared his throat, clearly uncomfortable with the personal nature of the conversation, but unwilling to leave with Victoria Chen in the room. Ms. Chen, the man said carefully, I was just discussing payment options with Mr. Hayes for his medical expenses. Actually, Victoria said, her tone taking on a businesslike quality, I'd like to cover Mr. Hayes' entire bill. He was injured helping me. It's the least I can do. Gabriel's face flushed hot with embarrassment and something that might have been anger. No, absolutely not. Victoria looked surprised, as if she wasn't accustomed to being refused. Mr. Hayes, you were hurt because of me. It's only fair. It's not fair. It's charity, Gabriel said more sharply than he'd intended. Noah looked between them with confusion, picking up on the tension, but not understanding its source. Mrs. Chen stepped forward diplomatically. Perhaps we should let Mr. Hayes rest. The payment discussion can wait. Of course, Victoria said, though Gabriel could see she was taken aback by his rejection. I should let you recover. I just wanted to make sure you were all right and to thank you properly. She placed the flower arrangement on the nightstand, the blooms filling the sterile room with unexpected color and fragrance. For a moment, Gabriel felt bad about his harsh response. She was only trying to help, to show gratitude in the way that probably made sense in her world. "Ms. Chen," he said as she moved toward the door, "I'm glad you're safe. That's all the thanks I need." She paused, studying his face with an intensity that made Gabriel uncomfortable. "May I ask you something, Mr. Hayes?" "Sure." "Why did you help me? You didn't know who I was. Couldn't have known if I was worth the risk. Why?" Gabriel considered the question, aware that Noah was listening, that Mrs. Chen was watching, that his answer mattered more than he fully understood. Because it was the right thing to do. Because if someone didn't help you and something bad happened, I'd have to live with that. Victoria nodded slowly, as if his answer confirmed something she'd suspected. "My card," she said, placing a small rectangle of expensive paper on the nightstand beside the flowers, "in case you change your mind about anything." After she left, the billing representative finished his spiel about payment plans with considerably less enthusiasm. Gabriel agreed to a monthly installment that would stretch their budget to the breaking point, signed papers that made his financial situation officially precarious, and tried not to think about the elegant simplicity of Victoria Chen's offer. "Dad," Noah asked when they were finally alone except for Mrs. Chen, "why didn't you let the pretty lady pay for the hospital?" Gabriel pulled his son closer, breathing in the familiar scent of his shampoo and the faint smell of crayons that always seemed to cling to his clothes. "Because when someone gives you something for nothing, they usually expect something back, and we don't have anything to give." It was a lesson Gabriel had learned the hard way through 3 years of well-meaning offers and charity that came with strings attached. Better to struggle with dignity than to accept help that would cost more than money in the end. But as he drifted off to sleep that afternoon, pain medication making his thoughts fuzzy and disconnected, Gabriel found himself thinking about Victoria Chen's business card and wondering if pride was a luxury he could really afford. The apartment felt smaller when Gabriel returned home the next evening, as if the hospital stay had somehow shifted his perspective on the familiar space. Every step sent a dull ache through his bandaged ribs, and the simple act of climbing the stairs to their second-floor unit left him winded and frustrated with his own weakness. Noah hovered nearby, his 7-year-old instincts telling him his father needed help, but unsure what he could actually do. He'd arranged his homework neatly on the kitchen table and had even attempted to make dinner, a bowl of cereal and a peanut butter sandwich that sat waiting with the earnest pride of a child trying to care for his parent. "Thank you, buddy," Gabriel said, settling carefully into his chair. "This looks perfect." Mrs. Chen had left a casserole in the refrigerator with reheating instructions written in her careful handwriting, but Gabriel was touched by Noah's effort. They ate together in comfortable silence, the normal rhythm of their evening routine providing an anchor of normality after the chaos of the past day. It wasn't until Noah was safely asleep that Gabriel allowed himself to fully confront their situation. He spread the hospital paperwork across the kitchen table, the business card Victoria Chen had left sitting prominently among the bills like an elegant white flag of surrender. The payment plan he'd agreed to would add another $300 to their monthly expenses, money they simply didn't have. Even with his overtime hours, their budget had been stretched thin. Without them, which seemed likely given his injury and time away from work, they'd be short on rent within a month. Gabriel's phone buzzed with a text message from Marcus, his supervisor at Skyline. "Hope you're feeling better. Take the time you need to heal. We'll figure out the schedule when you're ready to come back." The kindness in the message only made Gabriel feel worse. Marcus was a good supervisor, but he couldn't hold Gabriel's position indefinitely. If he couldn't perform the physical demands of the platoon, and with a fresh stab wound in his ribs, Gabriel wasn't sure when he'd be able to lift heavy equipment or spend 8 hours bending and reaching. A knock at the door interrupted his spiral of worry. Gabriel glanced at the clock. Nearly 10 p.m., too late for Mrs. Chen or any of their neighbors. He moved carefully to the window and peered through the blinds, surprised to see a woman in a tailored suit standing on their small porch. "Mr. Hayes," the woman's voice was polite but authoritative when Gabriel opened the door. "I'm Sarah Jenkins, Mrs. Chen's personal assistant. She wondered if you might have a moment to speak with her." Gabriel's guard went up immediately. In his experience, People who showed up at his door after dark rarely brought good news. What about? She has a business proposition she'd like to discuss with you in person. If you're feeling well enough, of course. Gabriel considered refusing. He'd already given his statement to the police, had answered their questions as thoroughly as he could, but something in the woman's manner suggested this wasn't a request he could easily dismiss. Ms. Chen sent you at 10 o'clock at night? She's a very busy woman during business hours, Mr. Hayes, and she thought this matter might be of some urgency to you. Gabriel glanced back at the bills spread across his kitchen table, visible through the doorway. Let me get my jacket. The car waiting at the curb was a sleek black sedan with tinted windows, the kind Gabriel had only ever seen from the outside. The interior smelled of leather and something subtle he couldn't identify, and the ride was so smooth he barely felt the potholes he knew littered the street. Your son is with a sitter? Sarah Jenkins asked, her fingers moving over the screen of her tablet without looking up. My neighbor. She watches him when I work. At the Skyline Complex, night shift janitor. 3 years now, correct? Gabriel's jaw tightened. You've done your homework. Ms. Chen likes to be thorough. The Chen Global Tower dominated the downtown skyline, its glass and steel facade reflecting the city lights like a vertical mirror. At this hour, most of the building was dark, but the top floors still glowed with activity. The security guard nodded to Sarah as they entered through a private entrance, and the elevator whisked them directly to the 60th floor without stopping. Victoria Chen's office occupied the entire corner of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. She stood as Gabriel entered, dressed in a charcoal business suit that somehow managed to be both authoritative and approachable. Gabriel, thank you for coming. Please sit down. The chairs facing her desk were more comfortable than anything in Gabriel's apartment, leather that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Gabriel perched on the edge, acutely aware of the gap between their worlds. Sarah, could you bring us some coffee? Victoria asked, then settled into the chair beside Gabriel rather than behind her imposing desk. How are you feeling? Healing well? I'm fine, Gabriel said automatically. Your assistant mentioned a business proposition. Victoria smiled at his directness. Right to the point. I like that. She leaned forward slightly, her expression becoming more serious. I need to hire someone, Gabriel. Someone I can trust completely. For what? Personal security and driver for my son. Oliver is 12 and my current arrangement isn't working out well. Victoria's voice carried a note of frustration. The security company I've been using sends different people every few weeks. Oliver doesn't feel comfortable with his strangers, and frankly, neither do I. Gabriel frowned. I'm not a trained bodyguard. I clean office buildings. You stepped between me and 2 armed men without hesitation. You took a knife wound to protect someone you'd never met. Victoria's eyes were steady on his. That tells me more about your character than any training and certificate could. Sarah returned with coffee in cups that probably cost more than Gabriel's weekly grocery budget. Gabriel accepted his gratefully, using the moment to process what Victoria was offering. What would the job involve exactly? Driving Oliver to and from school, staying with him during after-school activities, some weekend events, light security, mostly just being aware of your surroundings, making sure he's safe. Victoria paused. The salary would be $85,000 a year, plus health insurance for you and your son. Gabriel nearly choked on his coffee. $85,000 was more than twice what he made at the cleaning company. Enough to move them out of their cramped apartment, enough to give Noah opportunities Gabriel had only dreamed of providing. That's too much, he said, for driving a kid around. Is it? Oliver's safety is worth everything to me, and I need someone who understands what it means to be a father, someone who will care about my son's well-being as much as his security. Gabriel set his coffee cup down carefully. This is charity, expensive charity. This is business, Victoria corrected. I have a problem. I need someone I can trust with my son's life. You have skills I need. Courage, integrity, experience as a father. It's a fair exchange. Gabriel studied her face, looking for signs of pity or condescension, but found only professional honesty. Still, the offer felt too good to be true, the kind of opportunity that didn't come to people like him. Why me? You could hire professionals, people with actual training, because professionals see a job. You see a child who needs protection. Victoria's voice softened. Because when you were bleeding in that alley, you asked if I was hurt. Because you refused my money even when you desperately needed it. Because Oliver deserves someone who will care about him as a person, not just as a paycheck. Gabriel was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Noah's face when he'd asked about the broken toy robot still sitting on their kitchen counter, about the eviction notice that made this conversation feel like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man. I'd want to meet him first, Gabriel said finally. Your son. Make sure we get along. Victoria's smile was radiant. Of course, would tomorrow evening work? You could bring Noah if you'd like. Oliver would enjoy meeting him. As they worked out of the details, Gabriel felt like he was stepping through a doorway into a completely different life. The practical part of his mind cataloged the benefits: steady income, health insurance, the chance to give Noah stability and opportunities. But another part of him worried about the cost of accepting help, even help disguised as legitimate work. Gabriel, Victoria said as he prepared to leave, I know this feels overwhelming, but you saved my life. Let me help you build a better one for you and your son. Gabriel nodded, not trusting his voice to remain steady. As he rode the elevator down from the 60th floor, he thought about how quickly life could change, how one moment of courage could open doors he'd never imagined walking through. That evening, as he explained the opportunity to Noah over a simple dinner, Gabriel watched his son's eyes widen with excitement and wonder. So we'll have money for the robot movie? Noah asked, referring to the film he'd been asking to see for weeks. We'll have money for lots of things, buddy. Gabriel smiled, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. But we have to remember that this is an important one. I'll be responsible for keeping Ms. Chen's son safe. I can help, Noah declared. I'm very responsible. Mrs. Chen says so all the time. I know you are, buddy, and you'll get to meet Oliver tomorrow. I think you two might become friends. As Noah chattered excitedly about meeting a new friend, Gabriel's gaze drifted to the business card still sitting on the kitchen table. Maybe he thought it was time to stop fighting every offered hand and start believing that sometimes good things happen to good people. The job application lay on his kitchen table that night, signed and ready to be submitted. It represented more than employment. It was a bridge between the life they'd been living and the life they might be able to build together. The Chen estate was located in the most exclusive neighborhood in the city, where houses sat behind gates and mature trees shielded the wealthy from prying eyes. The security guard checked Gabriel's ID against a list, then waved him through with a curt nod. Wow, Noah whispered from the back seat, his face pressed against the window. It's like a castle. Gabriel had to agree. The house was massive, constructed of stone and glass, with soaring windows and multiple wings spreading from a central structure. Professionally landscaped gardens surrounded the property, and a circular driveway led to an imposing front entrance. Victoria greeted them at the door herself, dressed more casually than Gabriel had seen her before in slim pants and a silk blouse. She smiled warmly at Noah, who suddenly turned shy, hiding partially behind his father's leg. I'm so glad you both could come, she said, ushering them inside. Oliver is very excited to meet you. The interior of the house matched its impressive exterior. High ceilings, marble floors, tasteful art on the walls. It was elegant without being ostentatious, but Gabriel still felt out of place in his most presentable jeans and button-down shirt. A tall, slender boy appeared at the top of the curved staircase, watching them with careful, assessing eyes. That reminded Gabriel of Victoria. He had his mother's features, softened by youth, and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to privilege. Oliver, come down and meet Mr. Hayes and his son, Noah, Victoria called. Oliver descended the stairs with measured steps. Hello, he said, his voice polite but reserved. Welcome to our home. It's nice to meet you, Oliver, Gabriel replied, extending his hand. Oliver shook it with a firm grip that seemed practiced. This is my son, Noah, Gabriel added, gently nudging Noah forward. Hi, Noah said, looking up at the older boy with undisguised curiosity. Do you really live here? It's so big. Oliver's serious expression cracked slightly. Yes, sometimes it's too big. I get lost at least once a week. Noah's eyes widened. Really? No, Oliver admitted with the first genuine smile Gabriel had seen from him. But I could show you around if you want. Victoria caught Gabriel's eye and smiled. Why don't you two explore while Mr. Hayes and I talk? Just stay in the main house, please. As the boys headed off, with Noah already peppering Oliver with questions, Victoria led Gabriel to a sunlit room overlooking the gardens. Oliver doesn't warm up to people quickly, she said, gesturing for Gabriel to take a seat. I'm impressed. Noah has that effect on people. He's never met a stranger. Victoria sat across from him, her posture perfect, but somehow not stiff. I've had our legal team draw up a contract, full benefits, paid vacation, a company car for your use during working hours. You'd be an employee of Chen Global officially, assigned to personal security. She slid a folder across the coffee table. Gabriel opened it, scanning the document inside. The terms were more generous than she'd outlined the night before, including a signing bonus that would cover their rent for 6 months. This is very generous, Gabriel said carefully. It's competitive for the position. Victoria's tone was matter-of-fact. I value Oliver's safety above everything else. Gabriel continued reading, stopping at a paragraph about housing. What's this about a residence on the property? There's a guest house near the back of the estate. 3 bedrooms, fully furnished. It's yours if you want it. Having you on site would make security logistics simpler, especially on days with early departures or late returns. Gabriel tried to process what she was offering. Not just a job, but a complete change in their living situation. A chance to give Noah space to grow, to live in a safe neighborhood with good schools. I'd need to think about that part, he said. The rest of the contract seemed straightforward. Hours, responsibilities, chain of command. It was a real job with clear expectations, not the charity he'd initially feared. Victoria nodded. Of course. Take your time with that decision. But I do need to know about the position itself. Oliver starts a new term at West Hill Academy on Monday. West Hill Academy, the most prestigious private school in the city. Gabriel had driven past its manicured campus and thought about how different Noah's educational experience was in the crowded public school he attended. I'd like to accept the position, Gabriel said, surprising himself with how right the decision felt. But I want to be clear about something. I'm not a yes man. If I see security issues or concerns about Oliver's safety, I'll speak up, even if it's not what you want to hear. Victoria's expression was unreadable for a moment. Then she smiled. I wouldn't have it any other way. Oliver's safety comes first, above convenience, above appearances, above everything. From somewhere deeper in the house came the sound of boyish laughter. Both adults paused, listening to the rare sound of Oliver truly enjoying himself. It seems they're getting along, Victoria said softly. Noah's been wanting a friend. We move around a lot, and Gabriel trailed off, not wanting to delve into their difficult past. It's been just the two of you for a while, Victoria said. Not a question, but a statement. 3 years. His mother, Rachel, had cancer. By the time they diagnosed it properly, it was already stage 4. Victoria's expression softened with genuine sympathy. I'm sorry. Oliver's father left when he was 2, said he wasn't ready for the responsibility of a family. Her tone was matter-of-fact, but Gabriel caught the underlying hurt. Before he could respond, the boys burst into the room, Noah clutching what looked like a sophisticated remote-controlled robot. Dad, Oliver has all the robots, and he said I could borrow this one. Can I, please? Gabriel looked at Oliver, who seemed suddenly anxious. It's just an old one. I have newer models. I don't even play with it anymore. Gabriel recognized the gesture for what it was, a boy with everything offering something to a child who had very little. He caught Victoria watching her son with a mixture of pride and surprise. That's very generous, Oliver. Noah will take good care of it, won't you, buddy? I promise, I'll keep it super safe. As the boys continued chattering about the robot's features, Gabriel and Victoria exchanged a look of understanding. This arrangement might work out better than either of them had anticipated. Later, as they prepared to leave, Victoria walked them to the door. The car will pick you up Monday morning at 7 o'clock. I've arranged for your belongings to be moved to the guest house this weekend, if that works for you. Gabriel had made his decision during dinner, watching Noah and Oliver build an elaborate ramp system for the robot across the formal dining room table. Victoria had not only allowed the chaos, but had suggested improvements to their design. It was clear that despite her wealth and position, she valued her son's happiness above the pristine state of her furniture. "We'll be ready," Gabriel said, "and thank you for the opportunity." Victoria smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her composed features. "I think we're both taking a chance here. I just hope it works out as well as tonight has." As Gabriel drove home with an exhausted but happy Noah dozing in the back seat, he thought about the strange twists of fate that had brought them to this moment. One split-second decision in a rainy alley had changed the trajectory of their lives. For the first time in 3 years, Gabriel allowed himself to feel something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Hope for a better future. Hope that he could give Noah the life he deserved. Hope that perhaps the worst of their struggles were behind them. He couldn't have known then how wrong he was, or that the greatest dangers still lay ahead. Victoria Chen sat alone in her home office long after Gabriel and Noah had left, reviewing security footage of the night she was attacked. The security consultant she'd hired had obtained it from a building across from the alley, and the grainy black and white images told a story that troubled her deeply. The attackers had arrived 20 minutes before she'd walked past the alley. They'd been waiting, but positioned perfectly to intercept her as she took her usual route from the late board meeting to where her driver was parked, almost as if they'd known her schedule. Victoria paused the footage, studying the faces of the men who'd threatened her. They didn't look like random muggers. Their movements were too coordinated, their timing too precise. This hadn't been a chance encounter. It had been a planned attack. But who would want to harm her? Chen Global had competitors, certainly, but corporate rivalry rarely escalated to physical violence. She had made enemies during her rise to power, but most of those battles had been fought in boardrooms and courthouses, not dark alleys. Her phone buzzed with a text message. The screen displayed her brother's name, Marcus Chen. She hesitated before opening it. "Heard about your little adventure? Glad you're safe. Dinner soon to catch up? It's been too long." Victoria frowned. How had Marcus heard about the attack? She'd kept it quiet, making sure no press got wind of the incident. Only her assistant Sarah, the police, and now Gabriel knew the details. She set the phone down without responding. Her relationship with her brother had been strained since their father's death 5 years ago, when Victoria had assumed control of Chen Global. Marcus had expected to share leadership of the company, but their father's will had been clear. Victoria would hold the majority stake in the CEO position. Marcus had stormed out of the reading of the will, accusing Victoria of manipulating their father during his final days. They'd barely spoken since, except at obligatory family events they both attended for appearances' sake. Why reach out now after years of silence? And how did he know about the attack? Victoria turned back to her computer, pulling up a file labeled Phoenix. The project was Chen Global's most closely guarded secret, a revolutionary AI-driven medical diagnostic system that could identify cancer and other diseases years before conventional methods, potentially saving millions of lives. The prototype was nearly complete, with clinical trials scheduled to begin in 6 months. If successful, Phoenix would transform global healthcare and cement Chen Global's position as the leading medical technology company in the world. The project represented billions in potential revenue, but Victoria's interest went beyond profit. Phoenix had been her husband's dream before his death in a car accident 5 years ago, and completing it had become her obsession. Only a handful of people knew Phoenix's full capabilities. Had that information leaked somehow? Was the attack connected to the project? Victoria closed the file and pulled up the background check she'd run on Gabriel Hayes. His military service record was impressive. 10 years in Special Forces, 2 deployments to Afghanistan, specialized training in extraction and protection operations. After leaving the military, he'd worked in construction until his wife's illness had forced him to seek more flexible employment. There was nothing suspicious in his history, nothing to suggest he was anything other than what he appeared to be. A good man struggling to care for his son after tragedy had upended their lives. Victoria's instincts told her Gabriel was trustworthy, and her instincts had built a technology empire. But she hadn't survived in the cutthroat world of corporate leadership by being naive. She picked up her phone and dialed a private number. "Harrison," a male voice answered. "It's Victoria Chen. I need surveillance on Gabriel Hayes starting immediately. I've just hired him as security for Oliver, but I want to be certain he's exactly who he appears to be." Understood. What level of surveillance? Level 2 for now. Phone, email, movements. Nothing invasive unless you find something concerning. Consider it done. Victoria ended the call, feeling a twinge of guilt for investigating a man who had saved her life. But Oliver's safety had to come first. And in her world, trust had to be earned, not freely given. She turned back to the security footage, freezing it on the moment Gabriel had stepped into the frame, confronting her attackers without hesitation. There was something about him that intrigued her, a quiet strength, an unwavering moral compass that seemed rare in her experience. Victoria Chen had built her empire by making calculated decisions, by never allowing emotion to cloud her judgment. But as she studied Gabriel's face on the screen, she couldn't deny that something about this man affected her in ways she hadn't expected. Whether that was a danger or an opportunity remained to be seen. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of the guest house, casting golden lines across Gabriel's face as he adjusted his tie in the mirror. The three-bedroom cottage at the edge of the Chen estate was larger than any place he'd lived since leaving the military, furnished with the kind of casual elegance that spoke of money spent without consideration. Noah had spent the first night running from room to room, marveling at the space that was now theirs. "Are you nervous, Dad?" Noah appeared in the doorway, already dressed in his school uniform, backpack slung over one shoulder. Gabriel smiled at his son's reflection. "A little. First days are always hard. But you've been in wars and stuff. This is just driving a kid to school. Different kind of hard, buddy." Gabriel turned, straightening Noah's collar. "How about you? Ready for your new school?" Noah's eyes lit up. "Oliver says they have a science lab with real microscopes and robots, and the lunch has 3 different choices every day." The private school Victoria had enrolled Noah in was another benefit Gabriel hadn't anticipated. A prestigious academy with small class sizes and resources the public school could never offer. He'd protested initially, but Victoria had been adamant. It was included in his compensation package, not charity. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Gabriel opened it to find Oliver standing on the porch, impeccably dressed in his West Hill Academy uniform. "Mom sent me to see if you're ready," the boy said, his manner still formal, despite the previous evening's breakthrough. "The car is waiting?" "We're ready," Gabriel replied, grabbing his jacket. "Noah, let's go." The sleek black SUV waited in the circular driveway, Victoria standing beside it checking her phone. She looked up as they approached, her professional demeanor softening slightly at the sight of the boys. "Good morning," she said, slipping her phone into her designer handbag. "Everyone ready for the first day?" Oliver nodded solemnly while Noah bounced with excitement. Gabriel couldn't help noticing how the morning light caught in Victoria's dark hair, highlighting subtle strands of amber he hadn't seen before. She was dressed for the corporate battlefield in a tailored charcoal suit, but the soft silk blouse beneath hinted at a warmth her business persona rarely revealed. "The schedule is in the car's navigation system," Victoria explained as Gabriel opened the door for the boys. "Oliver has fencing after school today, and then he needs to be home by 5:30 for his piano lesson." "Got it," Gabriel said, sliding into the driver's seat. The luxury vehicle hummed to life, dashboard displays lighting up with information. "And Noah?" "Mrs. Elena will pick him up from school at 3:15 and bring him back to the estate." Victoria leaned in through the open window, her perfume, something subtle and expensive, briefly filling the space between them. "There's a security briefing at Chen Global this afternoon. I'd like you to attend. Get to know the team." "Is that necessary? I thought my job was just Oliver." Victoria's expression grew serious. "After what happened in that alley, I'm reviewing all security protocols. I want you there." Gabriel nodded, recognizing the steel beneath her polite request. This wasn't an invitation. It was an order. "I'll be there." As Gabriel pulled away from the house, he watched Victoria in the rearview mirror, standing straight-backed and composed until the car rounded the bend in the driveway. Only then did he see her shoulders drop slightly, a moment of private vulnerability that vanished as quickly as it had appeared. "Mom never lets anyone drive her except for you," Oliver remarked from the back seat, breaking the silence. "She says most people drive like they're trying to kill her." Gabriel caught the boy's eye in the mirror. "And how do I drive?" Oliver considered the question with surprising seriousness. "Like you're actually paying attention to the road. Like it matters if we get there safely." From the mouth of a 12-year-old, It was perhaps the greatest compliment Gabriel had received in years. The Chen Global Tower's security floor was a stark contrast to the elegant corporate spaces above, utilitarian, brightly lit, and humming with technology. Gabriel felt the weight of evaluating stares as Victoria led him into the conference room where 6 men and 2 women in dark suits waited around a polished table. "Everyone, this is Gabriel Hayes," Victoria announced, her CEO persona firmly in place. "He's joining our security team, focused primarily on Oliver's protection." A muscular man with a military haircut in the rigid posture of someone who had spent time in uniform stepped forward, extending his hand. "David Reed, head of corporate security. Former Marines?" "Army, Special Forces," Gabriel replied, accepting the handshake and noting the calculated pressure behind it. A dominance test, familiar territory from his military days. "Special Forces," Reed repeated, a hint of skepticism in his tone. "Well, we run a tight operation here, Hayes. Nothing like the chaos of field work." Victoria interrupted the posturing with brisk efficiency. "Gabriel will report directly to me regarding Oliver's security, but I expect full cooperation and information sharing between all teams." Her tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. "Now let's discuss the updated threat assessment." Reed nodded to a woman seated at the computer terminal who brought up a series of photographs on the wall screen. Gabriel recognized himself and Victoria in the grainy images from the alley. "The attack wasn't random," Reed stated, clicking through to close-ups of the assailants. "These men have connections to a security firm employed by Meridian Technologies." Gabriel kept his expression neutral, but his mind raced. Meridian was Chen Global's chief competitor in several markets, including the medical technology sector. An attack orchestrated by a corporate rival changed the entire security calculation. "What does Meridian want?" he asked, studying the images more carefully now. Victoria and Reed exchanged glances, a silent communication that spoke of shared knowledge. "That's not your concern," Reed replied dismissively. "Your job is the kid. This is just background, so you understand why we need to be vigilant." Gabriel felt his jaw tighten, but kept his voice level. "If I'm protecting Oliver from threats, I need to know what those threats are and why they exist. Anything less is negligence." The room fell silent. The security team glanced between Gabriel and Reed, sensing the immediate tension. Victoria watched the exchange with an unreadable expression. "Project Phoenix," she said finally, ignoring Reed's look of surprise. "Meridian wants information about Project Phoenix, our new medical diagnostic system. It's revolutionary, worth billions if it passes clinical trials." Gabriel turned to face her directly. "And they'd attack you physically for it? That seems extreme even for corporate espionage." "The technology could change global healthcare," Victoria explained. "Early detection of diseases years before conventional methods. Imagine identifying cancer at stage 0 before it's even technically cancer." The significance wasn't lost on Gabriel. Rachel might still be alive if her cancer had been detected earlier. A technology like that would indeed be worth billions, or worth attacking for. "Hayes doesn't need to know the details of Phoenix," Reed interjected. "Just that Oliver might be a target for leverage." "I disagree," Gabriel said calmly, addressing Victoria rather than Reed. "If Oliver is at risk because of Phoenix, I need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. Half the battle is anticipating the threat." Victoria studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "You'll get clearance for the basic Phoenix files." "David, make it happen." Reed's jaw clenched, but he nodded curtly. Gabriel had just made an enemy, but he'd secured vital information. A fair trade in his assessment. As the meeting continued, Gabriel paid careful attention to the security team dynamics. Reed clearly ran a hierarchical operation, with team members deferring to him automatically. Two of the team, a woman with shrewd eyes named Martinez and an older man called Jackson, seemed competent and professional. The others struck Gabriel as hired muscle, followers rather than thinkers. "One final item," Victoria said as the meeting drew to a close. "I'll be attending the Westmore Foundation Gala this weekend. Oliver will be accompanying me. Gabriel, I'd like you there as well." Reed started to object, but Victoria silenced him with a glance. "It's a high-profile event. Many of our competitors will be present, including Meridian's CEO. I want both corporate security and Oliver's detail coordinating." Yes, ma'am, Reed said, his tone professionally neutral, but his eyes cold as they flicked to Gabriel. After the meeting, Victoria walked Gabriel to the elevator. David doesn't like change, she said once they were alone. He'll adjust. He doesn't have to like me. He just has to work with me. Gabriel pressed the button for the parking garage. But I meant what I said. I need to know what I'm protecting Oliver from if I'm going to do my job properly. Victoria's professional mask slipped slightly, revealing a glimpse of the woman beneath. I know. That's why I hired you. Reed sees threats in terms of protocols and procedures. You see the human element. The human element is usually where security fails, Gabriel replied. Technology doesn't betray you. People do. The elevator doors opened, but Victoria put her hand on Gabriel's arm before he could step inside. Her touch was light but sent an unexpected current through him. Be careful with the Phoenix information, she said quietly. Very few people know the full scope of the project. There are complications I haven't shared publicly. Gabriel held her gaze. Like what? The technology was my husband's creation. Michael died 5 years ago in what was ruled an accident, but I've always had questions. Now, with these attacks, she trailed off, then straightened her shoulders, the moment of vulnerability passing. Just be vigilant, especially with Oliver. As Gabriel rode the elevator down to the parking garage, he couldn't shake the feeling that Victoria was still holding something back. He'd spent enough time in the field to recognize when someone wasn't telling the whole truth. The question was, what parts was she hiding, and why? The West Hill Academy campus resembled a small college more than a K-12 school, with ivy-covered brick buildings surrounding a central quad where students gathered between classes. Gabriel parked in the designated pickup area, nodding to the security officer who checked his credentials before waving him through. Oliver emerged from the Gothic main building surrounded by a group of boys in identical uniforms, though he walked slightly apart from them, not quite included in their animated conversation. Gabriel observed how the other students interacted with Oliver. Respectful but distant, perhaps intimidated by his family name or his serious demeanor. Oliver spotted the car and broke away from the group, his expression lightening slightly as he approached. You're exactly on time, he said, sliding into the back seat. Most drivers are either early or late. Punctuality was beaten into me in the Army, Gabriel replied, pulling away from the curb. How was school? Oliver shrugged. Fine. We dissected a frog in biology. That's it? Fine and dead frogs? Oliver seemed surprised by Gabriel's persistence. Most adults in his life apparently accepted his minimal responses without question. Jason Westmore kept asking about my mom, he finally offered. His dad works for Meridian. He wanted to know about some project she's working on. Gabriel's hands tightened imperceptibly on the steering wheel. What did you tell him? That my mom doesn't discuss work with me. Oliver looked out the window. It's true, she doesn't. There was something in the boy's voice, not quite resentment, but a resignation that spoke of long-standing emotional distance. Gabriel had heard that tone before, in the voices of military kids whose parents were physically present but mentally deployed elsewhere. Does that bother you? Gabriel asked carefully. That she doesn't talk about her work? Oliver considered the question with a seriousness that seemed beyond his years. No, I understand why. Dad was the same way before he died, always thinking about the next breakthrough, the next discovery. He paused. I just wish sometimes she'd look at me the way she looks at her company, like I'm the most important thing in her world. The raw honesty caught Gabriel off guard. He glanced in the rearview mirror, seeing not the privileged son of a billionaire, but a boy who felt the absence of his mother's attention as keenly as Noah felt the physical absence of Rachel. Your mom hired me because you are the most important thing in her world, Gabriel said gently. She's just not very good at showing it. Oliver met his eyes in the mirror, skepticism clear in his expression. She hired you because she's afraid something will happen to me. That's not the same thing. Fear comes from love, kiddo. You can't fear losing something you don't care about. The boy fell silent, absorbing this perspective as they drove through the city streets toward his fencing lesson. Gabriel made a mental note to speak with Victoria about making more time for her son. Money and security were poor substitutes for presence and attention, a lesson Gabriel had learned during his military years when he'd been physically absent from his own family too often. At the fencing academy, an exclusive club in a renovated historic building downtown. Gabriel watched from the observation area as Oliver transformed. On the strip, foil in hand, the boy moved with a confidence and grace absent in his everyday demeanor. Here, Oliver Chen was not the awkward son of a famous mother, but a skilled athlete in his own right, earning points through skill rather than family connection. Gabriel's phone buzzed with a text from Noah. Sent from the phone Gabriel had finally been able to afford for him. Mrs. Elena made cookies. Can Oliver come play robots after his lesson? Before Gabriel could respond, another text arrived, this one from Victoria. Emergency board meeting. Will be late. Can you handle dinner with the boys? Two simple requests that highlighted the growing entanglement of their lives. Children forming friendships, schedules merging, responsibilities shifting. It felt dangerous somehow, this blurring of professional and personal boundaries. Gabriel had learned in the military that clear lines were safest. Yet here he was, texting affirmative responses to both messages, accepting the complication without reservation. As he drove Oliver home after fencing, the boy seemed more animated than Gabriel had yet seen him, asking questions about Noah and what games they might play together. The mention of the robot Noah had borrowed sparked a detailed explanation of Oliver's entire collection, categorized by functionality and complexity. Dad was a robotics engineer, Oliver explained. He built custom pieces for me before he died. Mom keeps buying me new ones, but they're not the same. Your dad sounds like he was a pretty amazing guy, Gabriel said, navigating the winding road toward the Chen estate. He was? Oliver's voice softened with memory. He could fix anything, and he never talked to me like I was just a kid. He'd explain how everything worked, even the really complicated stuff. You must miss him a lot. Oliver nodded, looking down at his hands. Mom doesn't like to talk about him. I think it makes her sad. But sometimes I forget things about him, like exactly how his laugh sounded, or the way he'd push his glasses up when he was thinking hard. I'm afraid someday I'll forget everything. Gabriel felt a familiar ache in his chest, the same one he felt when Noah asked questions about Rachel that became harder to answer as memories faded. I have an idea, he said, making a sudden decision. Why don't you make a memory book? Photos, stories, things he liked to say. Noah and I did that for his mom. It helps. Oliver looked up, interest kindling in his eyes. Do you think Mom would mind? I think she'd want you to remember your dad, Gabriel said, though he wasn't entirely sure. Victoria Chen was a complex woman whose grief seemed tightly controlled, packaged away where it couldn't interfere with her carefully constructed life. Maybe you could work on it together. Maybe, Oliver said, though his tone suggested doubt. As they pulled through the security gate of the Chen estate, Gabriel noticed a sleek black Jaguar parked in the circular driveway, a vehicle he didn't recognize from the household fleet. Whose car is that? He asked casually, instincts sharpening. Oliver's expression darkened immediately. Uncle Marcus. Great. Gabriel recalled the name from Victoria's file. Marcus Chen, her younger brother, and a significant shareholder in Chen Global, despite holding no official position in the company. The siblings' relationship was described as strained in the security briefing, though details were sparse. You don't get along with your uncle? Gabriel asked, parking a discreet distance from the Jaguar. He's fake, Oliver said with the brutal honesty of children. He acts nice when Mom's around, but he's different when she's not, and he's always asking questions about her work. Another alarm bell rang in Gabriel's mind. What kind of questions? About Phoenix, mostly, and about you. Oliver looked at Gabriel directly. He wanted to know why Mom hired someone with no security background to protect me. Gabriel kept his expression neutral, despite his growing concern. When did he ask you this? Last time he visited, about 2 weeks ago. Oliver shrugged. I didn't tell him anything. I don't trust him. Smart kid, Gabriel thought. Aloud he said, let's go see what Uncle Marcus wants, shall we? They found Marcus Chen in the main living room, helping himself to Victoria's collection of expensive scotch. He turned as they entered, glass in hand, a practiced smile spreading across his face. The family resemblance to Victoria was evident in the high cheekbones and intelligent eyes, but where her features conveyed strength and purpose, his suggested charm deployed as a tool. Oliver, there's my favorite nephew. Marcus set down his drink and opened his arms, which Oliver reluctantly stepped into for a brief, awkward hug. "How's school? Terrorizing those teachers with that brain of yours?" "School's fine," Oliver mumbled, extricating himself from his uncle's embrace. Marcus's gaze shifted to Gabriel, the warmth in his expression cooling several degrees. "And you must be the new hire, the hero from the alley." "Gabriel Hayes," Gabriel confirmed, extending his hand. Marcus's handshake was firm but brief, a social obligation rather than a genuine greeting. "Marcus Chen, Victoria's smarter but less charming sibling." His tone was light, but Gabriel caught the undercurrent of resentment. "I was just stopping by to check on my sister after her unfortunate encounter. Is she home?" "Emergency board meeting," Gabriel replied, noting how Marcus's eyes narrowed slightly at this information. "She'll be late." "Pity. I was hoping to discuss some family business." Marcus reclaimed his scotch, swirling the amber liquid thoughtfully. "Perhaps you could pass along a message? Tell her I've been thinking about Phoenix, about its future. She'll understand." There was something in his tone, a subtle emphasis on future, that raised Gabriel's hackles. Before he could respond, Noah appeared in the doorway, followed by Elena, the housekeeper. "Oliver, I set up the robot course in the game room." Noah's excited announcement faltered as he registered the tension in the room in the presence of a stranger. "Sorry to interrupt," Elena said quickly, her accented voice apologetic. "I didn't realize Mr. Chen was visiting." Marcus waved away her concern with practiced magnanimity. "Not at all, Elena. I was just leaving." He drained his glass and set it down. "Oliver, always good to see you growing into such a fine young man." "Mr. Hayes, interesting to meet the man my sister has entrusted with her most precious possession." The phrasing made Oliver sound more like property than a person, and Gabriel saw the boy flinch slightly at the characterization. After Marcus departed, Gabriel sent the boys to play, while he called Victoria, stepping outside to ensure privacy. "Marcus was here," he said when she answered, keeping his voice low, "asking about Phoenix. Oliver says he's been asking questions about the project for weeks." Victoria's sharp intake of breath was audible over the line. "What exactly did he say?" "To tell you he's been thinking about Phoenix's future. He seemed to think you'd understand the significance." "I do." Her voice had gone cold in a way Gabriel hadn't heard before. "Gabriel, do not leave Oliver alone with Marcus, ever, under any circumstances." "You think your own brother would hurt his nephew?" "I think my brother would do whatever serves his interests." The control in her voice was absolute, betraying no emotion beyond resolve. "I'll be home in an hour. We need to talk, privately." The call ended, leaving Gabriel with more questions than answers. He returned inside to find Noah and Oliver engaged in an elaborate robot battle in the game room, their laughter a jarring contrast to the tension he'd just experienced. Elena approached, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mr. Chen's visits always upset the household," she said quietly. "The Signora will be disturbed." "You've worked for that family a long time?" Gabriel asked. Elena nodded. "Since before Oliver was born. I worked for Mr. Michael first, and then stayed when he married Victoria." Her eyes held old sorrow. Such a tragedy. His accident. The family was never the same. "What kind of accident was it?" "His car went off the coastal highway late one night. They said he fell asleep at the wheel, but..." She crossed herself. "Mr. Michael was not a man who made careless mistakes. Never." Gabriel nodded, filing away this perspective. "And Marcus? What was his relationship with Michael like?" Elena's expression grew guarded. "It is not my place to speak of family matters. It is if those matters might affect Oliver's safety." Gabriel pressed gently. The housekeeper hesitated, then sighed. "They were partners once in the early days of the company, but there was a disagreement, a big one. Mr. Michael bought out Mr. Marcus's share of their joint research. After that, things were cold between them." "What kind of research?" "Medical technology, the project that became Phoenix." Elena glanced toward the hallway, ensuring they were still alone. "Mr. Marcus believed the technology should be developed for military applications. Mr. Michael refused. He wanted it to save lives, not take them." This new information shifted Gabriel's understanding of the situation dramatically. If Phoenix had potential military applications valuable enough to cause a rift between partners, It might be worth far more than even Victoria had implied. Thank you, Elena. This helps. I say these things only because you protect Oliver, she replied solemnly. The boy has lost enough already. Victoria arrived home precisely 1 hour later, her expression tight with contained stress. She greeted the boys briefly, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, before asking Gabriel to join her in her study. The room was a reflection of its owner, elegant but functional, with bookshelves lining the walls and a desk positioned to face the door rather than the spectacular view behind it. Victoria always preferred to see what was coming. Marcus is making a play for Phoenix, she said without preamble, pouring herself a glass of water from a crystal decanter. He's aligned himself with investors who want to redirect the technology toward military applications. Applications Michael explicitly rejected. Gabriel leaned against a bookshelf, arms crossed. Elena mentioned that. She said they had a falling out over it. Victoria's eyebrows rose slightly. Elena has been with us a long time. She sees more than people realize. She took a sip of water, then set the glass down with deliberate care. What she probably doesn't know is that Marcus blamed Michael for ruining his career. He never forgave him for choosing the medical path over military contracts that would have made them billions. And now he wants to redirect Phoenix back to those military applications? Yes. With Michael gone, he thinks I'm the more practical sibling, more willing to maximize profit regardless of Michael's wishes. Victoria's laugh was brittle. He doesn't know me very well. Why would he think you'd agree now after all this time? Victoria's gaze shifted to a photograph on her desk. Michael Chen, holding a much younger Oliver on his shoulders, both of them laughing. Because he's positioned himself as the majority shareholder's proxy. If he can convince Arthur Westmore to back his vision for Phoenix, he could force a board vote. Westmore, as in the kid who was asking Oliver about Phoenix today? Victoria's head snapped up. What? Gabriel explained what Oliver had mentioned about Jason Westmore's questions at school. Victoria's face paled slightly. They're using the children now, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is getting out of hand. Victoria. Gabriel moved closer, dropping the professional distance he usually maintained. I need you to be completely honest with me. What does Phoenix actually do that makes it worth threatening children? She stared at him for a long moment, then turned to her computer, typing a series of passwords into a secure system. It's easier if I show you. The screen filled with technical schematics in medical imagery that meant little to Gabriel. Victoria pointed to what looked like a microchip smaller than a grain of rice. This is the core of Phoenix, a neural interface that can detect biological markers of disease years before conventional tests. But it's more than a diagnostic tool. In theory, the same technology could be adapted to enhance human capabilities. Faster reflexes, improved memory, even direct brain-computer interfaces. Super soldiers, Gabriel said, understanding dawning. Exactly. The military applications are extensive. Michael refused to develop that aspect of the technology. He believed it would inevitably be abused. Victoria's voice grew quiet. A month after he turned down a massive defense contract, his car went off that cliff. The implication hung in the air between them. Gabriel studied her face, seeing the doubt and suspicion she'd carried for 5 years. You don't believe it was an accident? I've never had proof it wasn't, she replied carefully. But Michael was brilliant, cautious, and intimately familiar with that road. It never made sense. And now, 5 years later, you're being attacked in alleys, and your son is being questioned by classmates. Victoria nodded, the weight of her suspicion finally shared. Phoenix enters clinical trials in 6 weeks. Once it's proven effective as a medical device, the military applications become much harder to pursue due to regulatory oversight. If someone wanted to redirect the technology, this would be their last chance, Gabriel finished. Have you told the police your suspicions? About Michael, what would I say? That my husband's car accident might have been murder because he wouldn't weaponize his medical breakthrough? She shook her head. I'd sound paranoid, and without evidence, making accusations against powerful people would only put Oliver at greater risk. Gabriel recognized the helpless frustration in her voice, the same he'd felt watching Rachel's cancer progress while doctors missed diagnosis after diagnosis until it was too late. Sometimes the system offered no protection against the worst possibilities. "So what do we do now?" he asked. "We protect Oliver," Victoria said firmly, "and we accelerate the Phoenix trials. Once the medical applications are established, it becomes much harder to redirect the technology." "And Marcus?" Victoria's expression hardened. "I'll handle my brother. Family disappointments are something of a specialty of mine." There was a story there, perhaps many stories, but Gabriel recognized now wasn't the time to press. Instead, he focused on the immediate security concerns. "We should cancel the Westmore Gala," he suggested. "Too many unknown variables, too many potential threats in one place." "Impossible. My absence would signal weakness precisely when I need to project strength." Victoria shook her head. "Besides, Arthur Westmore will be there. I need to speak with him directly, make him understand what Marcus is really proposing." Gabriel could see the determination in her posture, the absolute certainty that she was right. It was the same stubborn resolve he'd witnessed in commanding officers who refused to abort missions despite clear danger signs. Admirable, but potentially catastrophic. "Then we need a better security plan than what Reed proposed," he said, accepting that arguing would be futile. Oliver shouldn't attend. "It's an unnecessary risk." "Oliver has to be there," Victoria countered. "The Westmores have a son his age. The boys are expected to attend together. It's tradition." "Tradition isn't worth Oliver's safety." "This isn't just about tradition." Victoria ran a hand through her hair, a rare gesture of frustration. "Arthur Westmore values family above everything. Seeing Oliver being reminded that Phoenix is Michael's legacy to his son, it matters. It could make the difference." Gabriel recognized the calculation behind her reasoning. She wasn't wrong, but using Oliver as an emotional prop still felt exploitative. Before he could object further, a knock at the study door interrupted them. Noah stood there, looking uncertain. "Dad, Oliver's asking if we're still having dinner together. He says he's really hungry." The mundane concern, feeding hungry children, cut through the tension of international corporate espionage and potential murder conspiracies. Gabriel looked at Victoria, who seemed momentarily disoriented by the shift from existential threats to domestic responsibilities. "Yes, of course," she said, rising from her desk. "I promised pasta night, didn't I?" Noah's face lit up. "With the garlic bread? Oliver said you make the best garlic bread." "Did he now?" A genuine smile softened Victoria's features. "Well, we can't disappoint him, can we?" As they moved toward the kitchen, the conversation about Phoenix temporarily shelved. Gabriel was struck by the surreal duality of their situation. Discussing lethal corporate conspiracies one moment and children's dinner preferences the next. This strange new life blurred every boundary he'd established since Rachel's death, every wall he'd built to protect himself and Noah from further loss. The most disconcerting realization wasn't the potential danger or the complex web of corporate intrigue. It was how quickly he'd come to care about Victoria and Oliver Chen, not as obligations or employers, but as people who mattered to him personally, people he wasn't prepared to lose. The Westmore Foundation Gala transformed the city's Natural History Museum into a glittering showcase of wealth and influence. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across marble floors where the elite of the business world mingled in formal attire. Champagne flutes in hand, practiced smiles concealing calculation and ambition. Gabriel stood near a display of ancient artifacts, uncomfortable in the tuxedo Victoria had insisted was necessary for the event. His earpiece connected him to both Reed's corporate security team and the private detail he'd arranged through his military contacts, a precaution Reed had objected to until Victoria overruled him. Oliver and Jason Westmore sat at a table designated for the younger attendees, engaged in what appeared to be a tense conversation beneath their polite expressions. Gabriel kept them in his peripheral vision while tracking Victoria's movement through the crowd, where she navigated social currents with the skill of a seasoned diplomat. "Northwest entrance," came Reed's voice through the earpiece. "Marcus Chen just arrived. He's with Stephen Morris from Meridian." Gabriel spotted them immediately. Marcus in a tailored tuxedo that emphasized his resemblance to Victoria, accompanied by a tall, silver-haired man whose lean face suggested both intelligence and ruthlessness. Stephen Morris, CEO of Meridian Technologies, and Victoria's chief rival in the medical technology sector. Victoria saw them too, her posture stiffening slightly before she smoothed her expression into one of practiced cordiality. Gabriel moved closer, positioning himself within intervention distance while remaining unobtrusive. "Victoria," Marcus greeted his sister with an air kiss that never actually made contact. "Stunning as always. You remember Stephen?" "Of course." Victoria's smile was flawless but cold. "Stephen, I didn't expect to see you here. The Westmore Foundation's focus on ethical technology seems at odds with Meridian's recent patent applications." Morris chuckled, the sound entirely devoid of humor. "Always the idealist, Victoria. But idealism rarely survives market realities, does it? Just ask your brother." "My brother specializes in unrealistic expectations," Victoria replied smoothly. "A family trait he fortunately doesn't share with me." Marcus's smile tightened fractionally. "Speaking of family, I see Oliver is here, growing into quite the young man. Michael would be proud." The mention of her late husband was clearly intended to provoke, and Gabriel saw Victoria's knuckles whiten around her champagne flute, the only visible sign that the barb had landed. "Yes, he would be," she agreed, her voice steady, "particularly of Oliver's commitment to his father's vision for Phoenix." Morris's interest visibly sharpened at the mention of the project. "Ah, Phoenix. Marcus has shared some fascinating insights about its potential. Perhaps more extensive applications than Michael originally envisioned." "My husband's vision was perfectly clear," Victoria replied, "as were his wishes for the technology he created." "Wishes change, priorities evolve." Morris gestured around the opulent room. "This gala celebrates innovation that changes the world. Phoenix could revolutionize not just medicine, but national security, military capability, the very future of human potential." "At the cost of its original purpose," Victoria countered. "Phoenix was designed to save lives, not weaponize human biology." Marcus stepped closer to his sister, lowering his voice. "Victoria, be reasonable. The defense applications would triple Phoenix's value by overnight. Michael's idealism was admirable but impractical. Surely after 5 years you can see that." "What I see," Victoria said evenly, "is that you're still trying to profit from my husband's genius while dismissing everything he believed in." Morris smiled thinly. "Speaking of profit, I understand Arthur Westmore is reconsidering his position as your primary investor. Something about concerns over Phoenix's limited market applications?" The subtle threat wasn't lost on Gabriel. If Westmore withdrew his support, Victoria's control over Phoenix would be severely compromised. "Arthur and I have a meeting scheduled later this evening," Victoria replied with practiced unconcern. "I'm quite confident in his continued support." "Are you?" Marcus's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Even after Jason's interesting conversation with Oliver today? Children can be so revealing in their innocence." Gabriel saw Victoria's composure falter for just a fraction of a second, long enough to confirm that Marcus was indeed using the children as pawns in his corporate game. Before she could respond, Gabriel stepped forward, positioning himself at Victoria's side. "Ms. Chen, I apologize for the interruption, but there's a matter requiring your attention," he said smoothly. Marcus's gaze flicked to Gabriel, recognition and dismissal in his expression. "Ah, the heroic Mr. Hayes, still playing protector, I see." "Among other things," Gabriel replied pleasantly, though his eyes conveyed a very different message when they met Marcus's. "Ms. Chen?" "Of course," Victoria said, clearly grateful for the extraction. "If you'll excuse me, gentlemen, duty calls." As they moved away, Gabriel guided Victoria toward a quieter corner of the vast room, his hand barely touching the small of her back. "You okay?" "I'm fine," she said automatically, though the slight tremor in her voice betrayed her. "They're using the children, Gabriel. Using Oliver. I never thought Marcus would stoop so low." "He's desperate," Gabriel observed. "People get dangerous when they're desperate." "Indeed they do." Victoria took a steadying breath. "Thank you for the rescue, again. It's becoming something of a specialty," Gabriel replied with a slight smile, trying to lighten her mood. Victoria looked up at him, really seeing him for perhaps the first time that evening. "You clean up rather well in a tuxedo, Mr. Hayes. It's amazing what proper tailoring can accomplish." Gabriel adjusted his bow tie self-consciously. "Though I feel like I'm playing dress-up at someone else's party." You belong here as much as anyone, Victoria said, her voice suddenly fierce. More than most, actually. These people trade on influence and family connections. You've earned everything you have through courage and integrity. The unexpected defense caught Gabriel off guard. Before he could respond, his earpiece crackled with Reed's voice. Hayes, we've got movement at the East Service entrance. Two unidentified males attempting to access the building. Security is intercepting. Copy that, Gabriel replied, immediately shifting back to alert status. Stay with Victoria. I'll check on Oliver. The boys' table was across the room, requiring Gabriel to navigate through clusters of elegantly dressed guests who seemed oblivious to the potential security threat developing around them. He spotted Oliver still seated with Jason Westmore, their body language suggesting increasing discomfort with each other's company. As Gabriel approached, he caught the tail end of Jason's statement. Dad says your mom is being stubborn about Phoenix. It's just going to make things harder for everyone. Oliver's response was measured but firm. My mom knows what she's doing, and my dad would agree with her. Gabriel placed a hand on Oliver's shoulder. Everything okay here? Relief flashed across Oliver's brain. Mr. Hayes, yes, we're fine. Actually, Gabriel said, I think there's someone your mother wanted you to meet. Would you mind coming with me for a moment? Jason Westmore watched them leave with undisguised curiosity. Once they were out of earshot, Gabriel guided Oliver toward the museum's central atrium, where Victoria's security detail had established a defensible position near the main entrance. What's wrong? Oliver asked, his perceptiveness outpacing his years. Is it about Uncle Marcus? Just a security precaution, Gabriel assured him, though he kept his hand firmly on the boy's shoulder. Sometimes it's better to be careful than sorry. His earpiece came to life again. Hayes, situation at the east entrance is contained. False alarm, us, catering staff without proper credentials. Perimeter secure. Gabriel acknowledged the update but maintained his vigilance. False alarms had a nasty habit of becoming distractions from real threats in his experience. There you are. Victoria appeared beside them, her evening gown catching the light as she moved. To casual observers, she would appear perfectly composed, but Gabriel noted the tension in her shoulders, the hyper-awareness in her gaze as it swept the surrounding area. Oliver, dear, Arthur Westmore has been asking about you. Shall we go say hello? Oliver nodded, though his expression suggested he'd rather do almost anything else. As they moved toward the VIP section where Arthur Westmore held court, Gabriel noticed Marcus and Morris watching them from across the room, their attention focused and predatory. Arthur Westmore was a bear of a man with a shock of white hair and the ruddy complexion of someone who'd spent significant time outdoors despite his enormous wealth. He greeted Victoria with genuine warmth, clasping both her hands in his. Victoria, my dear, and young Oliver. My word, you're nearly as tall as your father was at your age. Westmore's booming voice carried despite the ambient noise of the gala. Jason tells me you're quite the fencing champion now. Oliver smiled politely. I'm still learning, sir. Jason is much better than I am. Nonsense. Jason says you bested him 3 matches to one last tournament. Westmore clapped Oliver on the shoulder with avuncular affection. You've got your father's modesty as well as his brains, I see. Victoria smoothly guided the conversation toward Phoenix, describing recent breakthroughs in the clinical testing phase. Gabriel remained alert, but allowed himself to be positioned as a background presence, observing the dynamic between Victoria and her primary investor. Westmore listened attentively, asking occasional questions that revealed a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of the technology. When Victoria finished her update, he nodded thoughtfully. Impressive progress, my dear. Truly impressive. Michael would be proud of how you've shepherded his vision. His expression grew more serious. Though I must admit, I've heard some alternative perspectives on Phoenix's potential applications. From my brother, no doubt, Victoria said, her tone light but her eyes watchful. Among others. Westmore glanced at Oliver, then back to Victoria. Perhaps we could discuss this privately. Victoria hesitated, then nodded. Of course. Gabriel, would you stay with Oliver? As Victoria and Westmore moved toward a private alcove, Gabriel positioned himself beside Oliver, maintaining clear sight lines to both the boy and Victoria. From across the room, he noticed Marcus watching the interaction with narrowed eyes, whispering something to Morris. They're talking about me, aren't they? Oliver asked quietly. about Phoenix and what happens to it. Gabriel considered deflecting, but decided on honesty. Yes, your mom is protecting your dad's legacy, making sure his work helps people the way he intended. And Uncle Marcus wants to change it. It wasn't a question. Make it into something Dad would hate. Something like that, Gabriel agreed, impressed by the boy's awareness. Oliver was quiet for a moment, then looked up at Gabriel with unexpected intensity. Dad always said that what we create defines us, that we have to be careful with our inventions because they outlive us. He swallowed hard. I don't want his creation to become something bad after he's gone. The simple statement carried the weight of a child trying to protect not just a legacy, but a memory, trying to ensure that what remained of his father in the world stayed true to who Michael Chen had been. Gabriel felt a surge of protective instinct that went beyond professional obligation. Your mom won't let that happen, he assured Oliver. And neither will I. Across the room, Victoria's conversation with Westmore appeared to be growing more animated. Gabriel couldn't hear their words, but Victoria's body language suggested she was making an impassioned case. Westmore listened with his head tilted, his expression unreadable. Gabriel's earpiece crackled again. Hayes, we've got a situation developing at the north entrance. Security badge readers are malfunctioning, and we've lost camera coverage in sectors 3 and 4. The hairs on the back of Gabriel's neck stood up, not a mechanical failure, but a deliberate attack on the security system. He pressed his transmit button. Initiate Protocol Omega. I'm moving the primary package now. He turned to Oliver, keeping his voice calm but authoritative. Oliver, we need to go. Right now. To his credit, the boy asked no questions, immediately falling into step beside Gabriel as they moved toward the nearest exit. Gabriel tapped his earpiece again. Reed, alert Victoria. I'm extracting Oliver. Meet at fallback position Alpha. Copy that, Reed replied, his voice tense but controlled. Martinez is moving to Victoria now. Gabriel guided Oliver through the crowd, maintaining a casual pace to avoid drawing attention while placing himself between the boy and potential threats. They had nearly reached the west exit when Gabriel spotted 2 men in catering uniforms moving purposefully against the flow of guests, their eyes scanning the room with professional focus. Change of plan, Gabriel murmured, smoothly altering their course toward a staff-only door he'd noted during his pre-event security sweep. Stay close to me, Oliver. The service corridor beyond the door was empty, its utilitarian lighting a stark contrast to the opulence of the main hall. Gabriel led Oliver quickly through the back areas of the museum, navigating based on the floor plan he'd memorized. Are those men trying to hurt us? Oliver asked, his voice remarkably steady despite the circumstances. I don't know their intentions, Gabriel answered honestly, but I'm not taking chances with your safety. They rounded a corner and nearly collided with a museum security guard. The man's hand dropped to his hip instinctively before he recognized Gabriel's security credentials. There's a situation developing, Gabriel explained quickly. I need to get this boy to the loading dock exit immediately. The guard nodded. Follow me. We can use the service elevator. As they stepped into the elevator, Gabriel's earpiece came alive with Reed's urgent voice. Hayes, be advised. Victoria is secure, but we've identified 4 hostile actors in the building. They appear to be targeting Oliver specifically. Repeat, they want the boy, not Victoria. Cold understanding washed over Gabriel. This wasn't about corporate espionage or stealing Phoenix technology. This was a kidnapping attempt, using Oliver as leverage against Victoria. The elevator doors opened onto the museum's cavernous basement level. The guard led them through a maze of storage areas filled with artifacts not currently on display, their shapes casting eerie shadows in the dim lighting. Loading dock is just through those doors, the guard said, pointing ahead. I'll call ahead to make sure the area is secure. As the guard reached for his radio, Gabriel noticed his hand trembling slightly. Instinct kicked in a fraction of a second before the guard's other hand emerged with a stun gun. Gabriel shoved Oliver behind a large packing crate as the guard lunged forward. Trained reflexes took over as Gabriel deflected the attack, twisting the stun gun from the man's grasp and delivering a precise strike to his solar plexus. The guard doubled over, gasping as Gabriel secured the weapon. He's with them, Gabriel explained to a wide-eyed Oliver. Change of plan again. He tapped his earpiece. Reed, security has been compromised. Unknown how many infiltrators. Moving to extraction point Bravo. Only Static answered him. Either the basement walls were blocking transmission or the communication system had been deliberately jammed. Neither possibility boded well. Gabriel weighed their options. The loading dock was now a potential trap, and returning upstairs would mean fighting through an unknown number of hostiles. That left one alternative, the museum's mechanical rooms, which would lead to maintenance tunnels connecting to the adjacent buildings. Oliver, I need you to listen very carefully, Gabriel said, crouching to the boy's eye level. We're going to move through some very tight spaces. It might be scary, but I need you to be brave and follow me exactly, okay? Oliver nodded, his face pale but determined. I'm not scared. Well, not too scared. It's okay to be scared, Gabriel assured him. Being brave isn't about not feeling fear. It's about doing what needs to be done, even when you're afraid. He led Oliver deeper into the basement, using the emergency floor plan in his memory to navigate toward the mechanical areas. The labyrinthine storage section was eerily quiet, except for the distant hum of air handlers and their own careful footsteps. They had nearly reached the mechanical room access when Gabriel heard voices ahead, at least two men, their tones clipped and professional. He pulled Oliver into the shadow of a large crate, listening. The boy has to be down here somewhere, one voice said. Donovan said Hayes was heading for the loading dock. Donovan's neutralized, replied the second voice. Hayes is ex-military. He took him down and changed course. Morris wants the kid unharmed. He's no use as leverage if he's damaged. Just find him. The mother's coming apart upstairs thinking her precious boy might be hurt. Another hour of this, and she'll sign over Phoenix just to get him back. The voices moved away, but their words remained, crystallizing the situation for Gabriel. This was indeed about Phoenix, using Oliver to force Victoria's cooperation, and Stephen Morris was behind it all. Gabriel turned to Oliver, whose face showed he'd heard and understood every word. They want to use me to make Mom give them Phoenix, the boy whispered. They won't get that chance, Gabriel promised, but we need to move quickly and quietly now. They slipped into the mechanical room, a hot, noisy space filled with humming equipment. Gabriel located the maintenance access panel and quickly removed it, revealing a narrow utility tunnel beyond. It's tight, but we can make it, he told Oliver. This leads to the parking structure. Once we're there, I can get you to safety. Oliver looked at the dark, confined space with understandable apprehension, but nodded resolutely. I can do it. Gabriel went first, using his phone's flashlight to illuminate the dusty passage. Oliver followed, his breathing quick but controlled as they crawled through the claustrophobic tunnel. The heat was oppressive and the rumble of machinery surrounded them, but they made steady progress. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only minutes, they reached another access panel. Gabriel listened carefully before carefully pushing it open, revealing a dimly lit utility room in the adjacent parking structure. Almost there, he told Oliver, helping the boy out of the tunnel. My car's on level 3. Once we reach it, we'll contact your mother and the police. They had just stepped into the stairwell when a figure emerged from the shadows above them. Marcus Chen, a pistol held casually in his manicured hand. Oliver, Mr. Hayes. Marcus's voice was calm, almost conversational. That was quite the impressive escape. Military training certainly has its uses. Gabriel pushed Oliver behind him, assessing their options. The stairwell offered little cover, and with Marcus above them, retreat was their only viable option. Uncle Marcus? Oliver's voice was small with betrayal. You're helping them? Helping is such a limited term, Marcus replied. I'm securing our future, Oliver. Your father's technology is worth billions, but only if it's properly applied. Your mother is too blinded by sentiment to see that. She's honoring Dad's wishes, Oliver shot back with surprising vehemence. Your father was an idealist who didn't understand the real world, Marcus said, his tone hardening. Phoenix's military applications will save more lives by preventing conflicts than it ever could as a medical device. By creating super soldiers? Gabriel asked, slowly shifting his position to keep Oliver shielded while looking for an opening. By weaponizing human biology? Marcus's smile was cold. By ensuring American military dominance for the next century. Michael's reluctance to see that bigger picture is what got him killed. The casual admission hung in the air, confirming Victoria's worst suspicions. Oliver's sharp intake of breath told Gabriel the boy had understood the implication immediately. You, you had Dad killed? Oliver's voice cracked with horror. I gave him every opportunity to be reasonable, Marcus replied, his tone suggesting he was discussing a business negotiation rather than murder. He refused. Decisions have consequences, Oliver. That's something your mother is about to learn as well. Gabriel saw his opening as Marcus's attention shifted momentarily to Oliver. He lunged forward, grabbing the stair railing and vaulting over it to the lower level, simultaneously pushing Oliver through the door or into the parking garage itself. Run, Gabriel shouted as a shot rang out, the bullet ricocheting off the concrete near his head. Oliver sprinted across the parking level, Gabriel close behind him. They weaved between parked cars as Marcus appeared at the stairwell door, taking more careful aim with his second shot. Gabriel felt a white-hot pain across his upper arm as the bullet grazed him but kept moving. Level 3, he gasped to Oliver, pointing toward another stairwell. Black SUV near the elevator. They reached the stairs and pounded upward, the sound of pursuit echoing behind them. Gabriel's training kicked in as he calculated angles, cover positions, and escape routes. The SUV had enhanced security features, bulletproof glass, and a direct line to Victoria's security team. If they could reach it, they had a chance. Level 3 appeared before them, and Gabriel pushed through the door, scanning for threats before allowing Oliver to follow. The parking level seemed deserted, their footsteps echoing in the concrete expanse as they moved toward the row where Gabriel had parked. The SUV came into view, and with it, Stephen Morris, leaning casually against the vehicle's hood. Two men in dark suits flanked him, their postures indicating concealed weapons. Gabriel pulled Oliver behind a concrete pillar, assessing their deteriorating situation. Marcus would be coming up the stairs behind them. Morris and his men blocked their primary escape route in Gabriel's wound, while Minor was bleeding enough to leave a trail. Gabriel, Oliver's whisper was frightened but controlled. What do we do? Gabriel thought quickly. The parking garage had multiple exits, but reaching any of them meant crossing open space. Their best option was to find another vehicle, but hot wiring a car would take time they didn't have. Your phone, Gabriel said suddenly. Do you have it with you? Oliver nodded, pulling a sleek smartphone from his pocket. Can you access the museum's systems remotely? The security protocols or environmental controls? Oliver's eyes widened with understanding. Maybe. Mom had them install some of our smart building technology last year during the renovation. If they're using the standard interface, his fingers flew across the screen, navigating through security layers with the ease of a digital native. Gabriel kept watch, dividing his attention between Marcus's likely approach, route, and Morris's position by the SUV. I'm in, Oliver whispered. I can access the fire suppression and alarm systems. Perfect, Gabriel said. On my signal, trigger the alarms and sprinklers for this level. Then we make for the northwest stairwell. It leads directly to the street. Oliver nodded, his finger poised over the activation command. Gabriel took a deep breath, centered himself, and gave the signal. The garage erupted into chaos as alarms blared and sprinklers doused the entire level. Through the artificial rain, Gabriel guided Oliver in a crouching run toward the northwest corner, using cars as cover. Behind them, shouts of confusion rose from Morris's men as visibility dropped dramatically. They had nearly reached the exit when Gabriel spotted movement to their right. Marcus, soaking wet but still pursuing, his gun raised despite the poor visibility. Gabriel pushed Oliver ahead. Keep going, down the stairs and out to the street. Find a police officer. What about you? Oliver cried, clutching Gabriel's sleeve. I'll be right behind you, Gabriel promised. Go, now. As Oliver disappeared through the exit door, Gabriel turned to face Marcus, calculating the distance between them and the likelihood of reaching cover before Marcus could fire. It's over, Hayes, Marcus called through the falling water. Morris has men on every exit. The boy won't get far. You killed your partner, Gabriel replied, slowly shifting position to draw Marcus away from Oliver's escape route. Your own sister's husband. For money. For vision, Marcus corrected, advancing cautiously. Phoenix was my idea originally. Michael stole it, redirected it, diminished it. I'm simply reclaiming what should have been mine. And Oliver, is he just collateral damage in your reclamation? Something flickered across Marcus's face. the first hint of genuine emotion Gabriel had seen from him. Oliver won't be harmed. He's still my nephew. The nephew whose father you murdered, Gabriel noted, continuing to back away, drawing Marcus further from the stairwell. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to have you as a guardian after Victoria signs over Phoenix to save him. Marcus's expression hardened. Sometimes sacrifices must be made for progress. History vindicates the visionaries, not the sentimentalists. Is that what you tell yourself? Gabriel was nearly at the opposite wall now, Marcus following as planned. That you're a visionary instead of a murderer and a kidnapper? Marcus raised his gun, anger finally breaking through his controlled exterior. Enough! Where is the boy? The stairwell door burst open behind Marcus before Gabriel could answer. Victoria stood there, flanked by Reed and two security officers, her evening gown incongruous against their tactical gear. Her eyes locked with Gabriel's across the distance, relief visible even through the still-falling sprinkler rain. He's safe, Marcus, Victoria said, her voice carrying despite the alarms. Oliver reached the street. The police are already taking Morris into custody. It's over. Marcus turned, momentarily distracted by his sister's arrival, and Gabriel seized the opportunity. He lunged forward, closing the distance before Marcus could react, and disarmed him with a precise strike to the wrist. The gun clattered to the concrete as Reed and his team moved in to secure Marcus. Victoria rushed to Gabriel, her hands reaching for him instinctively before stopping at the sight of blood on his sleeve. You're hurt, she said, her voice catching. It's nothing, Gabriel assured her. Oliver? Safe with the police, she confirmed. He told them everything about Morris, about the kidnapping attempt. Her voice faltered. About what Marcus said regarding Michael's death. Gabriel nodded, the adrenaline of the confrontation beginning to fade, leaving bone-deep weariness in its wake. I'm sorry, Victoria. No one should have to hear that about someone they loved. Victoria's composure cracked then, the careful control she'd maintained through corporate battles and personal losses finally giving way. Gabriel caught her as she swayed, pulling her against him despite the water still falling around them, heedless of her ruined gown or his bloodied shirt. I thought I'd lost him, she whispered against Gabriel's chest. Her words meant only for him. When Reed told me Oliver was missing, all I could think was that I'd failed. Failed Michael, failed Oliver, failed at the one thing that truly matters. You didn't fail, Gabriel said gently, his arms tightening around her. Oliver is safe, and now you know the truth about Michael. You can finally get justice for him. Victoria looked up, her face wet with sprinkler water and tears she'd held back for 5 years. Because of you, you saved Oliver. You saved me. Again. The intimacy of the moment struck Gabriel with unexpected force. This powerful woman allowing herself to be vulnerable with him, trusting him with not just her son's life, but her own grief and fear. Before he could respond, Reed approached, tactfully clearing his throat. Ms. Chen, the police need your statement, and the paramedics want to check Mr. Hayes' injury. Victoria straightened, composing herself with visible effort. Of course. Thank you, David. As they moved toward the exit, Victoria's hand found Gabriel's, her fingers intertwining with his in a gesture that seemed both deliberate and unconscious. Gabriel returned the pressure, offering silent support as they prepared to face the aftermath of the night's events. The parking garage exit opened onto a scene of controlled chaos, police vehicles with flashing lights, paramedics attending to minor injuries, and in the center of it all, Oliver sitting in the back of an ambulance, a shock blanket around his shoulders. The boy's face lit up when he saw them approaching. Mom, Gabriel! Victoria rushed forward, embracing her son with a fierceness that spoke of the fear she'd experienced. Gabriel held back, allowing them their moment of reunion, but Oliver reached out, grabbing his hand and pulling him into their circle. Gabriel saved me, Mom, Oliver said, his voice shaking slightly. He knew exactly what to do, even when Uncle Marcus, his voice faltered on the name. I know, sweetheart, Victoria soothed, brushing Oliver's damp hair from his forehead. Gabriel is very good at saving people. It's what he does. Oliver looked up at Gabriel with unconcealed admiration. Are you going to leave now, since the bad guys are caught? The question caught Gabriel off guard. In his military career, that had always been the pattern. complete the mission, save the hostages, then move on to the next assignment. But this felt different. These people felt different. "I'm not going anywhere," Gabriel said firmly, surprising in himself with the certainty he felt. "Not unless you and your mom want me to." "We don't," Oliver said immediately, looking to Victoria for confirmation. "Right, Mom?" Victoria's eyes met Gabriel's over her son's head, complex emotions passing between them. Gratitude and fear, hope and hesitation. "No," she agreed softly. "We very much want you to stay." A paramedic approached to check Gabriel's arm, breaking the moment. As the wound was cleaned and bandaged, Gabriel watched Victoria giving her statement to a detective, her composure fully restored despite her bedraggled appearance. Oliver remained close to his mother, occasionally glancing toward Gabriel as if to reassure himself that he was still there. Noah would be worried sick, Gabriel realized suddenly. He'd been safe at the Chen estate with Elena during the gala, but by now he would have heard about the incident from the news or from Elena herself. Gabriel pulled out his phone to call, but it was dead, likely damaged by the sprinkler system. "Here," Victoria said, appearing at his side and offering her own phone. "Call Noah. Tell him we're all okay and coming home soon." Gabriel accepted the phone gratefully. "Thank you. He'll be worried." "Of course he will," Victoria said, her tone softening. "He loves you. And he's grown quite attached to Oliver, too." As Gabriel dialed, he reflected on how quickly their separate lives had become intertwined. Two single parents and two boys, forming connections none of them had anticipated. Noah answered on the first ring, his voice thick with tears that he tried manfully to disguise. "Hey, buddy," Gabriel said gently. "We're all okay. A little wet and tired, but okay." "Elena said there were bad guys," Noah said, "and that Uncle Marcus was one of them." Gabriel winced at the uncle designation. The boys had grown that close already. "There were some bad people, but the police have them now, and Oliver and Victoria are safe. Are you coming home soon?" Home, the word resonated in a way Gabriel hadn't expected. The guest house on the Chen estate had become home with surprising speed, as had the people now gathered around him. "Yes, buddy, we're all coming home soon." As Gabriel's ended the call, he found Victoria watching him, her expression open in a way he hadn't seen before. The careful corporate mask had fallen away, leaving just a woman who had nearly lost everything that mattered to her. "Gabriel," she said quietly, stepping closer, "I need to tell you something. Before we go back, before we face all the questions and complications that are coming." "What is it?" he asked, aware of Oliver watching them curiously from a few feet away. Victoria took a deep breath. "When I thought Oliver was in danger, when I didn't know if he was safe, I realized something. Something I've been avoiding acknowledging." Gabriel waited, giving her the space to find her words. "I realized that somewhere along the way, you and Noah became essential to us. Not just as security or as friends, but as—" She hesitated, searching for the right term. "As family. The kind of family I thought we'd never have again after Michael died." The admission hung between them, vulnerable and raw. Gabriel thought of all the boundaries he'd established after Rachel's death, the walls he'd built to protect himself and Noah from further loss. Walls that Victoria and Oliver had somehow slipped past without him noticing, until it was too late. "I know it's complicated," Victoria continued when he didn't immediately respond. "There's the professional relationship, the difference in our situations, all the practical considerations. But tonight showed me that sometimes the most important things are also the simplest. You matter to us, Gabriel. You and Noah both." Gabriel looked at Oliver, who had given up any pretense of not listening and was now watching them with undisguised hope. He thought of Noah waiting anxiously at home, of the easy friendship that had developed between the boys, of the unexpected connection he'd found with Victoria. "I'm not very good at this," he admitted finally, "at letting people in. After Rachel died, I convinced myself that Noah and I were better off self-sufficient, that depending on others was too risky." "I understand," Victoria said softly. "After Michael, I did the same thing. Threw myself into work, focused on being strong for Oliver, never allowing myself to be vulnerable. And now?" Victoria smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her chain-soaked, exhausted face. "Now I think maybe we've both been wrong. Maybe being strong isn't about standing alone. Maybe it's about finding people worth being vulnerable with. Before Gabriel could respond, Oliver appeared at Victoria's side, looking between them with the direct curiosity of childhood. Are you two going to kiss now? Because Noah said his dad likes my mom, and I think my mom likes his dad. And in movies, this is usually when people kiss. Victoria's surprised laugh broke the tension, and Gabriel found himself chuckling despite the absurdity of the situation. Standing in a crime scene, soaking wet, discussing relationships with a precocious 12-year-old. Oliver Chen, Victoria scolded without heat. Some conversations are private. So that's a yes? Oliver pressed, undeterred. Gabriel caught Victoria's eye, seeing the same mix of amusement and affection he felt reflected there. That, he told Oliver solemnly, is a conversation for another time. When we're all dry and safe at home, and I've had a chance to talk to Noah too. Oliver considered this, then nodded. That's fair, but just so you know, Noah and I would be okay with it. We already talked about it. Did you now? Victoria asked, raising an eyebrow. Yep, we think it would be good for both of you, and for us too. Oliver delivered this assessment with the matter-of-fact confidence of someone who had thoroughly analyzed the situation. Plus, then we'd really be brothers. The simple statement carried weight far beyond its words, a child's articulation of the family they were inadvertently forming, the connections that had developed across boundaries of class and circumstance, the belonging they'd all been seeking in their separate ways. A detective approached, apologetically explaining that they needed to complete a few more formalities before they could leave. As Victoria and Oliver moved to follow him, Gabriel remained where he was for a moment, absorbing the unexpected turn his life had taken. One split-second decision in a rainy alley had led here, to danger and revelation, to loss and discovery, to the possibility of a family reconstituted from broken pieces. Gabriel had no illusions that the path forward would be simple. Marcus's arrest and the revelations about Michael's death would bring investigations, media attention, and corporate upheaval. The differences in their backgrounds and lifestyles would present practical challenges. Their own wounds and defenses would need to be navigated with care. But watching Victoria with her arm around Oliver's shoulders, both of them occasionally glancing back to ensure he was still with them, Gabriel felt something he hadn't experienced since before Rachel's illness: hope. Not just for survival or basic security, but for joy, for connection, for a future expansive enough to hold all their complicated histories and new possibilities. As he moved to join them, Gabriel reflected that perhaps this was the real rescue. Not the dramatic interventions in alleys or parking garages, but the slower, quieter salvation of hearts learning to trust again after loss. If so, it wasn't clear who was rescuing whom anymore. Perhaps they were all saving each other, one day at a time. The autumn sun cast long shadows across the Chen estate as Gabriel watched Noah and Oliver kicking a soccer ball on the lawn. 3 weeks had passed since the incident at the gala. 3 weeks of police statements, corporate meetings, and legal proceedings that had left little time for deeper reflection. Marcus Chen remained in custody, denied bail for conspiracy, attempted kidnapping, and involvement in Michael Chen's death. Stephen Morris faced federal charges, while Victoria worked tirelessly to stabilize Chen Global after the scandal initially sent stocks plummeting. Despite the professional boundaries they'd maintained since that moment of vulnerability in the parking garage, Victoria had taken to stopping by the guest house in the evenings, ostensibly to discuss security, but inevitably staying for dinner or to help the boys with homework. They're getting good, Victoria said, appearing beside Gabriel at the window. Oliver's never been interested in sports before. Noah's influence. He thinks every problem can be solved with either a soccer ball or a robot. Victoria smiled, the expression softening the fatigue lines on her face. Not a bad philosophy. Gabriel noted her formal business attire despite the late hour. Tough day? The board voted on Phoenix today, whether to continue with the medical applications or consider alternatives. They want the military contracts. Victoria nodded. Arthur Westmore stood by me. His vote plus mine gave us the majority, but it was close. 3 members sided with Marcus's vision, even after everything. Those military contracts would be worth billions. Those 3 board members have been asked for their resignations, Victoria said with a hint of steel. Phoenix will proceed as Michael intended, as a medical breakthrough, not a weapons platform. He would be proud of you. I hope so. Victoria's voice softened. The district attorney called today. They're formally charging Marcus in Michael's death. The evidence from Morris's files is substantial. Gabriel covered her hand with his. I'm sorry, I know this can't be easy. Victoria looked down at their hands, then intertwined their fingers. Deep down, I think I always suspected Marcus was involved. I just didn't want to believe my own brother could. Family can hurt us more deeply than anyone, because we want so badly to believe the best of them. Victoria met his gaze, their connection palpable in the fading light. The boys have been asking when we're going to the cabin. Oliver keeps talking about teaching Noah to fish. The mountain retreat, rarely used since Michael's death, had become a frequent topic among the boys, who craved escape from the press coverage and legal proceedings. Noah's never been fishing, Gabriel admitted. Rachel and I always talked about taking him camping, but then she got sick, and after, his shrug encompassed all their deferred dreams. We could go this weekend, Victoria suggested casually despite the invitation's weight. The Phoenix announcement will be made tomorrow. It might be good for all of us to get away. The proposal hung between them, ostensibly about the children, but laden with unspoken possibilities. A weekend away from the boundaries that had defined their relationship. I think the boys would love that, Gabriel replied carefully, and it would be good for them to have some normal experiences. Victoria's smile held a hint of amusement at their mutual caution. For all of us, I think. Shall we tell them at dinner? The boys' excited whoops when they announced the trip echoed through the guest house that evening. Gabriel caught Victoria watching with a wistful expression, as if glimpsing family life she'd resigned herself to never experiencing again. Later, after Victoria and Oliver had returned to the main house and Noah was asleep, Gabriel's phone buzzed with a text from Detective Rivera. New information on the Chen case. Need to meet tomorrow. Important. Gabriel frowned. The case against Marcus seemed solid. What could be significant enough to warrant an urgent meeting? He texted back confirmation, unease settling in his stomach. Just when life seemed to be finding equilibrium, the past reached out with unseen complications. Chaya. The police station buzzed with activity as Gabriel made his way to Detective Rivera's office. He had dropped the boys at school, promising to pick them up early for their weekend trip. Victoria was at Chen Global, overseeing the Phoenix announcement. Rivera greeted Gabriel with a firm handshake, gesturing him into her cluttered office. Thanks for coming. This isn't something I wanted to discuss over the phone. What's happened? Gabriel asked, taking the offered seat. Rivera opened a file folder containing photographs of technical diagrams, medical scans, and a child's drawing. These were found in Michael Chen's safe deposit box. The bank only recently connected it to our investigation. Gabriel studied the images, recognizing Phoenix's core technology in the diagrams, though the applications seemed different. What am I looking at? According to our experts, these are designs for a Phoenix variant specifically for pediatric neural applications. Rivera tapped the medical scans. These are brain scans of a child with severe neural damage, alongside projections of how Phoenix might repair those pathways. She paused. The scans are of Oliver Chen from when he was 5, after an accident that isn't documented in any hospital records we can find. The revelation landed like a physical blow. Oliver was injured? Victoria never mentioned anything like that. There's more. Rivera pushed forward the child's drawing, a crude depiction of a car going off a cliff with stick figures labeled Dad and Me. This was with the documents. Handwriting analysis confirms it was drawn by Oliver. Gabriel stared at the drawing, its implications crystallizing with terrible clarity. Oliver was in the car with Michael when he died. He witnessed his father's murder. Rivera nodded grimly. And based on these records, he sustained significant brain trauma in the crash, trauma that Michael was apparently trying to treat using an early Phoenix prototype. But Oliver's fine now, no signs of cognitive impairment, which suggests the treatment worked. Rivera leaned forward. These documents indicate Phoenix wasn't originally designed for general medical diagnostics. It was created to repair neural damage, damage suffered by Michael's own son. The pieces aligned in Gabriel's mind. Victoria's fierce protection of Phoenix, her commitment to preserving Michael's vision, the gaps in Oliver's early medical records. "Does Victoria know you've found these?" he asked. "Not yet. I wanted to speak with you first, given your position in the household." Rivera studied him carefully. "This complicates the case against Marcus. If Phoenix was initially developed as a treatment for Oliver, it changes the timeline and potentially the motive." Gabriel shook his head. "Why bring this to me instead of Victoria?" Rivera's expression softened. "Because there's one more thing you need to see." She pulled out a final document, a handwritten letter in Michael's handwriting addressed to Victoria, dated one day before his death. Gabriel scanned its contents, the words blurring as he absorbed their meaning. Michael's certainty that Marcus was working with military contractors, his fear that Oliver's treatment would be weaponized, and most devastatingly, his suspicion that Victoria herself might be persuaded to pursue military applications once she understood the technology's full potential. Michael didn't trust his wife with the truth, Gabriel said quietly. "It appears he had concerns about what choices she might make," Rivera confirmed. The letter indicates he planned to remove critical components of Phoenix's neural interface design, components necessary for military applications, but not for basic medical diagnostics. If Victoria did not know about Oliver's treatment or the true origins of Phoenix, it would shake the foundation of everything she believed about her husband and his work. And if Oliver had witnessed his father's murder, but had no conscious memory due to his injuries, "What are you planning to do with this information?" he asked Rivera. "Officially, it becomes part of the case against Marcus. But unofficially, I thought you should have a chance to prepare Victoria and Oliver before they're blindsided in court. The media coverage will be brutal once this comes out." Gabriel nodded, grateful for the consideration. "When will you need to make this official?" "I can give you until Monday. After that, it goes in the formal record." Rivera gathered the documents back into the folder. "I'll have copies made for you. And Hayes, for what it's worth, I'm sorry. This kind of truth is never easy, especially for the boy." Gabriel left the police station, the folder of copied documents feeling heavier than its physical weight. The weekend at the cabin, which had promised a respite, now loomed as the setting for new revelations that would inevitably cause more pain. Yet perhaps away from the pressures of the city, it might also be the safest place for Victoria and Oliver to confront these buried truths. As he drove to meet Victoria after the Phoenix announcement, Gabriel wrestled with the implications. Oliver had witnessed his father's murder, had been injured severely enough to require experimental treatment, and had then lost all memory of the event. The technology that had saved him had become both his father's legacy and the catalyst for his uncle's betrayal. And at the center stood Victoria, brilliant, determined Victoria, who had spent 5 years fighting to preserve what she believed was her husband's vision. Unaware that the technology she championed had originally been developed to save her son. The Phoenix announcement would be over by now, Victoria's careful plans for Michael's legacy proceeding exactly as she had intended, and Gabriel was about to shatter her understanding of that legacy entirely. The mountain road wound through forests ablaze with autumn colors, the afternoon sun gilding the edges of maple and oak leaves. In the backseat of Victoria's Range Rover, Noah and Oliver had finally dozed off, heads lolling as the vehicle climbed higher into the mountains. Gabriel glanced at Victoria behind the wheel, noting the tension in her jaw despite her outward composure. He had shown her Rivera's folder that morning, after the triumphant Phoenix announcement that had sent Chen Global's stock soaring. She had read through the documents in silence, her face betraying no emotion until she came to Oliver's drawing. Then, for just a moment, her careful control had cracked, a single tear tracking down her cheek before she wiped it away. "The cabin," she had said when she finally spoke. "We'll discuss this at the cabin. Not here, not where." She had gestured vaguely at the corporate headquarters. Oliver deserves better than that. Now, miles from the city, Gabriel could see her preparing herself for the conversation to come. She had insisted on driving, perhaps needing the task to occupy her hands and mind during the journey. "They look peaceful," she said softly, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror. "Hard to believe everything they have been through. Children are resilient, more than we give them credit for." Victoria nodded, her gaze returning to the winding road. "I've been trying to remember that trip, the one before Michael's accident. Oliver was so excited about going to the cabin. We were supposed to stay for a week, but I got called back for an emergency board meeting after just 2 days. Her knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. I flew back to the city. They were going to follow the next day. If I had stayed, you can't do that to yourself, Gabriel said gently. Revisiting every decision, imagining different outcomes. It's a path with no end. But I should have known, Victoria whispered. After the accident, Oliver was different, quieter. They told me it was trauma from losing his father, but now I see there was more. And Michael, all those late nights he said he was working on Phoenix's medical applications. He was trying to help our son, and I never knew. Gabriel reached across the console, his hand covering hers on the gear shift. You didn't know because Michael chose not to tell you. That was his decision, not yours. Why wouldn't he tell me about Oliver's injuries? Why keep something so important a secret? I don't know, Gabriel admitted. Maybe he thought he was protecting you both. Maybe he feared how you'd react to the experimental treatment. Or maybe he didn't trust me, Victoria finished. Maybe he believed I would choose the military applications once I understood what Phoenix could really do. We can't know what he was thinking, Gabriel said. All we can do now is decide how to help Oliver understand the truth. Victoria fell silent for several miles. When she spoke again, her voice was steadier, decision replacing doubt. Oliver deserves to know his own history, and he deserves to know that his father loved him enough to create Phoenix specifically to help him. Whatever Michael thought of me, whatever doubts he had about my priorities, there's no question he was a father who would do anything for his son. She glanced at Gabriel. You understand that kind of love. Gabriel thought of Noah, of the desperate measures he'd considered during Rachel's illness, the compromises he'd made afterward to keep their small family intact. Yes, he said simply. I do. The cabin appeared around the next bend, nestled among towering pines with a view of the lake below. It was larger than Gabriel had expected, not the rustic retreat he'd imagined, but a beautiful timber-framed home with broad windows and a wraparound porch. The boys woke as the car crunched over gravel. Their excitement immediately rekindled as they tumbled out to explore. Victoria watched them race toward the dock, extending into the lake, a complex mixture of emotions crossing her face. Michael built this place before we were married, she said. Before Chen Global, before all the success. He used to say it was the only place he could really think clearly. She turned to Gabriel, her expression resolute. I think he would want Oliver to know the truth here, in the place he loved most. When will you tell him? Tomorrow, Victoria decided. Let him have today, fishing and exploring and just being a boy without worries. We'll talk in the morning. As they unpacked and settled in, Gabriel was struck by how naturally they moved around each other, the four of them falling into domestic patterns as if they'd been doing it for years rather than weeks. Victoria knew exactly which bedroom Noah would love most, the one with the small loft accessible by ladder, while Gabriel instinctively handled the heavier luggage and started the water heater without being asked. By evening, they had settled around a fire in the massive stone fireplace, the boys playing chess on an antique set while Victoria prepared hot chocolate in the open kitchen. Gabriel found himself watching her, noting how different she seemed here, her corporate armor set aside, dressed in jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. You're staring, she said without looking up from the saucepan she stirred. Just noticing how at home you seem here, Gabriel replied. It suits you, this place. Victoria glanced around the cabin, nostalgia softening her features. It always felt more like home than any other place. Michael and I had our best times here, before everything got so complicated. She poured hot chocolate into mugs, adding extra marshmallows to the boys' portions. I stopped coming after he died. It hurt too much. And now? Now it feels right to be here again. Her eyes met his, warmth and uncertainty mingling in their depths. With all of you. The simple statement carried weight beyond its words, an acknowledgement of the family they were inadvertently forming, the bonds developing despite the unconventional circumstances of their meeting. Gabriel felt an answering warmth spread through him. As they settled by the fire, Oliver looked up from the chess game he was winning against Noah. Mom, can we go out in the boat tomorrow? Dad always used to take me fishing from the rowboat. Of course, Victoria said, smoothing his hair affectionately. Though I'm afraid I'm not much of a fisherwoman. Perhaps Gabriel can help. I've done a bit of fishing, Gabriel acknowledged, though I'm no expert. Dad kept all his fishing gear in the shed, Oliver said enthusiastically. He had these special lures he made himself. He said they were guaranteed to catch the biggest fish in the lake. Then we'll definitely use those, Gabriel promised, catching Victoria's eye over the boys' heads. The casual reference to Michael was encouraging. Oliver speaking of his father with fondness rather than grief, sharing memories rather than avoiding them. As the evening progressed, Noah gradually dozed off on the couch. Gabriel carried him to bed, tucking him into the loft room that had so delighted him earlier. When he returned, he found Victoria alone by the fire, Oliver having retired to his own room. He remembered where his old bedroom was, she said softly as Gabriel sat beside her, and walked straight to it, even though we haven't been here since he was 7. She twirled her mug between her hands. I keep wondering what else he remembers without realizing it. Children's minds are remarkable, Gabriel said. The brain finds ways to protect itself from trauma, but memories have a way of remaining even when they're not consciously accessible. Victoria nodded, setting her mug aside. That's what frightens me about tomorrow. What if discussing the accident triggers memories Oliver isn't prepared to handle? What if learning he witnessed his father's murder is too much for him? He won't be alone, Gabriel reminded her. He'll have you and me and Noah. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Victoria's hand found his in the firelight, their fingers intertwining. When did you become such an essential part of our lives, Gabriel Hayes? It's been barely 2 months since that night in the alley. Some connections don't follow conventional timelines, Gabriel said, thinking of how quickly he had come to care for Victoria and Oliver. Sometimes people fit together because they're carrying complementary pieces of brokenness. Victoria's smile was soft in the firelight. That's a poetic way of looking at shared trauma. Not just trauma, Gabriel clarified. Strength too, courage, resilience, all the things that make survival possible. Victoria shifted closer, the distance between them diminishing. And is that what we're doing now, surviving? I think, Gabriel said carefully, we might be on the verge of something more than just survival. The kiss that followed felt inevitable, a natural progression from all that had come before. Victoria's lips were soft against his, tentative at first, and then more certain as Gabriel responded. It was a gentle exploration, unhurried and tender, both of them aware of the sleeping children and the important conversations that awaited in the morning. When they separated, Victoria rested her forehead against his, eyes closed. I haven't felt this way in a very long time. It's terrifying. For me too, Gabriel confessed. After Rachel died, I convinced myself that chapter of my life was closed permanently. And now? Now I'm reconsidering a lot of things I thought were certain. He brushed a strand of hair from her face, including the idea that happiness belongs to my past rather than my future. Victoria opened her eyes, meeting his gaze with characteristic directness. Whatever happens tomorrow with Oliver, with the revelations about Phoenix and Michael, I want you to know that what's happening between us, matters to me. It's not a distraction or a reaction to stress. It's real. The declaration hung between them, honest and vulnerable in a way Victoria Chen rarely allowed herself to be. Gabriel kissed her again, a silent affirmation of his own feelings, before they reluctantly separated. We should get some rest, Victoria said, though she made no move to stand. Tomorrow will be challenging. I'll be right beside you, Gabriel promised, whatever happens. Morning arrived with crystalline clarity, sunlight streaming through the pines. Gabriel woke early, finding Noah still asleep in his loft and the rest of the cabin quiet. He made coffee in the kitchen, watching the mist rise off the lake through the broad windows. Victoria joined him as the first cup finished brewing, dressed in flannel and jeans, her face free of makeup. I didn't sleep much, she admitted, accepting the mug he offered. Understandable. Have you decided how you want to approach this with Oliver? Victoria nodded, leaning against the counter beside him. Directly but gently. I think we should show him the documents, the medical records, even his own drawing. He deserves to understand what happened to him and how Phoenix came to be. And Michael's letter to you? A shadow crossed Victoria's face. That part I'm less certain about. The implications about my priorities, about what Michael thought I might do with Phoenix. I don't want to color Oliver's understanding of his father. You don't have to decide everything this morning, Gabriel reminded her. Some truths can wait until Oliver's ready for them. Their conversation paused as they heard movement from the bedrooms. Oliver emerging first, his hair tousled from sleep, but his eyes alert. He stopped at the sight of them together in the kitchen, his observant gaze noting their proximity to each other. "Morning, Ambone," he said, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Did you two finally kiss last night?" Victoria nearly choked on her coffee, while Gabriel couldn't suppress a chuckle at the boy's directness. "Good morning to you too, Oliver," he deflected. "Sleep well?" "Better than at home," Oliver admitted, accepting the glass of orange juice Victoria handed him. "I always sleep better here. Dad said it was the mountain air." Victoria exchanged a glance with Gabriel, recognizing the natural opening. "Oliver, there's something we need to talk about this morning. Something important about your father and about you." Oliver's expression grew serious, his perceptiveness once again belying his years. "Is it about the accident? About why Dad died?" The question hung in the air, confirming what Gabriel had suspected, that Oliver sensed there were gaps in his understanding of his father's death, questions that had never been fully answered. "Yes," Victoria said gently, "but it's also about you and about Phoenix. There are things I've only recently learned myself, things your father never told me." "What kind of things?" Oliver asked, wariness creeping into his voice. Victoria gestured toward the living room. "Let's sit down. I have some documents to show you." As they settled around the coffee table, Noah appeared, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Gabriel pulled him aside gently, explaining that Victoria and Oliver needed some private time to discuss family matters. Noah nodded with surprising understanding, content to explore the cabin's bookshelves while the conversation unfolded. Victoria began carefully showing Oliver the medical scans and explaining in simple terms what they revealed, that he had suffered a brain injury in the same accident that had taken his father's life. Oliver studied the images with the focused attention he brought to all new information, asking occasional questions about the technical details. "So I was hurt when Dad died," he said finally. "But I got better." "Yes," Victoria confirmed, "and that's where Phoenix comes in." She showed him the technical diagrams, explaining how Michael had originally developed the neural interface technology specifically to help repair Oliver's brain injury. "Phoenix was created to help you, Oliver. Your father designed it because he loved you and wanted to heal you." Oliver absorbed this, his expression thoughtful rather than distressed. "Is that why I don't remember the accident? Because of my brain injury?" Victoria hesitated, looking to Gabriel for support. He nodded encouragingly and she continued, "Martley, yes, but there's something else you need to see." She carefully placed Oliver's drawing on the table between them. "You drew this shortly after the accident. The doctors found it among your things at the hospital." Oliver stared at the crude crayon drawing, the car plummeting from a cliff, the stick figures labeled Dad and me. His brow furrowed as he studied it, as if trying to connect it to memories just beyond his reach. "I was in the car with Dad," he said slowly. "I saw what happened." "Yes," Victoria said, her voice gentle but firm. "You were there, Oliver, and based on this drawing and what the police have discovered, it appears the accident wasn't really an accident. Someone forced your father's car off the road." "Uncle Marcus," Oliver said immediately, the connection forming in his mind with startling quickness. "It was Uncle Marcus, wasn't it? That's why he's in jail now." Victoria nodded, watching her son carefully for signs of distress. "The police believe so, yes. They think Uncle Marcus wanted Phoenix for military purposes, and when your father refused, he took drastic action." Oliver was quiet for a long moment, processing this confirmation of something he seemed to have already suspected on some level. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller, more vulnerable than before. "Did I know, before my injury, did I know Uncle Marcus hurt Dad?" "I don't think so," Victoria said, moving to sit beside him and putting her arm around his shoulders. "I think your brain protected you from that memory, and Phoenix's treatment helped heal the physical damage without restoring the traumatic memories." Oliver leaned into his mother's embrace, accepting the comfort she offered. "That's why Dad made Phoenix, to help kids like me with brain injuries, not for soldiers or military stuff. Exactly, Victoria confirmed. Your father was very clear about that. Phoenix was meant to heal, not harm. That's why I've fought so hard to keep it focused on medical applications. Gabriel watched the interaction with a deepening respect for both Victoria and Oliver, for her courage in sharing these difficult truths, and for his remarkable resilience in absorbing them. Noah had crept closer during the conversation, sensing its importance, and now sat quietly beside Gabriel, his presence a silent support. Do I have to remember? Oliver asked suddenly, looking up at his mother with worry in his eyes. The accident, I mean. Do I have to try to remember what happened? Victoria stroked his hair gently. No, sweetheart. You don't have to remember anything you're not ready for. Some memories may come back on their own over time, or they may not. Either way is okay. Oliver nodded, seeming relieved by this assurance. Then his gaze fell on another document, partially visible in the folder. Michael's letter to Victoria, its handwriting recognizable even from across the table. Is that from Dad? He asked, reaching for it before Victoria could intervene. Gabriel saw Victoria's momentary hesitation, the internal debate about whether to share this final, more complicated truth. But Oliver had already taken the letter, his eyes scanning the first few lines with the eager hunger of a child starved for connections to a lost parent. Victoria met Gabriel's gaze across the room, a silent communication passing between them. Then she nodded slightly, making the decision to allow her son this unfiltered glimpse of his father's final thoughts, whatever pain it might cause her personally. Oliver read slowly, his expression changing as he absorbed Michael's concerns about Marcus, about the military applications of Phoenix, and finally about Victoria herself. When he finished, he looked up at his mother with confusion. Dad thought you might choose the military version of Phoenix, but you didn't. You never would. Victoria's smile was sad but genuine. Your father and I had different perspectives on many things, Oliver. He was an idealist, pure in his vision. I've always been more practical, more willing to consider different options. She took a deep breath. He wasn't entirely wrong to be concerned. If I hadn't known how Phoenix began as a way to help you, so I might have been tempted by the military contracts. They would have made the company incredibly valuable. But you chose the medical path anyway, Oliver pointed out, even before you knew about me. I chose to honor what I believed was your father's vision, Victoria clarified. Now I understand it was more than that. It was his love for you made tangible, and that makes me even more certain we're on the right path. Oliver considered this, then refolded the letter with careful precision. Dad was wrong about you, he said with the absolute certainty of childhood. He should have trusted you with the truth. The simple declaration brought tears to Victoria's eyes, tears she had been holding back throughout the entire difficult conversation. Thank you for saying that, she whispered, pulling her son close. 1 year later, the soft lights of the Chen Foundation Gala illuminated the grand ballroom where doctors, scientists, and families gathered to celebrate Phoenix's first year of pediatric treatments. At the center of it all stood Victoria, elegant in a midnight blue gown, addressing the crowd with quiet confidence. 1 year ago, we launched the Phoenix Foundation with a singular mission: to ensure that no child would be denied this life-changing treatment because of financial circumstances. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that we've helped over 200 children recover from traumatic brain injuries that were previously considered untreatable. From his position at the edge of the stage, Gabriel watched Victoria with pride that went beyond professional admiration. She caught his eye and smiled briefly before continuing. Phoenix began as one father's desperate attempt to help his injured son. My late husband, Michael Chen, created this technology out of love, a father's deepest instinct to protect and heal his child. Today, that love has rippled outward to help hundreds of families reclaim possibilities that once seemed lost forever. In the front row sat Oliver and Noah, now 13 and 8, dressed in matching suits and sitting shoulder to shoulder like the brothers they had essentially become. Oliver's journey over the past year had not been easy. There had been nightmares, questions, and moments of grief as he integrated the truth about his father's death and his own forgotten trauma. But there had also been healing, strengthened by the steady support of the family that had formed around him. None of this would have been possible without the unwavering support of my partner in both life and work, Gabriel Hayes, Victoria continued, her voice warming as she gestured toward him. His courage and compassion reminded us all that family isn't just defined by blood, but by who stands beside you through the darkest times. The simple gold band on Victoria's left hand caught the light as she turned the page of her speech, matching the one Gabriel wore, symbols of the commitment they had made 6 months earlier in a small ceremony at the lake cabin, with only the boys and a few close friends as witnesses. After the gala, as they drove home through the quiet streets, Oliver and Noah dozed in the back seat, tired from the evening's excitement. Victoria rested her head against Gabriel's shoulder as he drove, their comfortable silence the language of people who no longer needed words to communicate their deepest feelings. "Did you ever imagine this?" Victoria asked eventually, her voice soft in the darkness. "That night in the alley when you stepped in to help a stranger, did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Gabriel thought back to that rainy night that now seemed a lifetime ago, to the desperate single father struggling to make ends meet, to the wounded boy who rarely smiled, to the CEO who had hidden her loneliness behind corporate armor. "No," he admitted, reaching for her hand, "but I've learned that life's most important journeys often begin with a single step taken without knowing the destination." As they pulled into the driveway of what was now their shared home, the boys stirring awake in the back seat, Gabriel reflected on the remarkable path that had led them here. From two broken families had emerged something new and whole, proof that even the deepest wounds could heal with time, love, and the courage to begin again. "Come on, sleepyheads," Victoria called to the boys. "Tomorrow's a school day." As they walked toward the house together, Gabriel's arm around Victoria's waist, the boys racing ahead, he thought about Michael Chen and the legacy he had left behind. Not just Phoenix's healing technology, but the son who carried forward his compassion and brilliance. And perhaps, Gabriel reflected, this family they had created together was a fitting tribute to both Michael and Rachel, proof that love continued beyond loss, that broken pieces could form new patterns of unexpected beauty. Whatever challenges tomorrow might bring, they would face them as they had faced the past year's trials, together, with courage and honesty, as a family forged in adversity, but sustained by choice. And in that knowledge, Gabriel found a peace he had once thought impossible, the certainty that they had all, at last, found their way home.